when he transmigrated into a primitive era where raw power decided who ruled and which man women chose to father their children. By the time he became king, every gorgeous girl around wanted his babies. Then, one full moon night, one of the fiercest queens in his alliance ended up hanging upside down in his hunting trap. She was gorgeous, furious, and totally upside down, a bad combination for his judgment. She ordered him to cut her loose, so he grabbed her heel and tickled it. A tiny squeak escaped her lips, her face flushed red, and she promised to kick his teeth in just as her hunters showed up. He blocked their view, cut the vine, and caught her upright before the humiliation went public. Still red-faced, she shoved him away but stayed close enough to whisper another threat. In this world, the rule was brutal. Weak men became prey. Strong men became fathers. His name was Ryland Wilder, and he arrived as prey. So, how does a 24-year-old city guy go from prey to leading a tribe and women fighting over him? Go back to his first morning beside a primitive river, 12 hours before the system paid out. One moment he was carrying shopping bags through modern city. The next, he woke up beside muddy water under strange trees. Hide-clad strangers stepped from the brush. He mistook them for performers and raised his hands, asking where he was. A sharpened bone flew past his ear. It missed by an inch, a little lower, and the future family line was completely doomed. Another hunter drove a spear across his side. The stone tip ripped his shirt and skin in one pass. That answered the costume question. He was a decent runner back home, pulling ahead for 3 glorious seconds. Then, a private survival interface called the Frontier system spoke inside his head. Survive for 12 hours to get 1 attribute point. In a survival pack, stay alive and he would get his tools. One hunter blocked the river while 2 cut through the trees. He stopped asking polite questions and ran for the narrowest opening. A bone club spun toward his head. Movies always taught him to lean back and look cool. Movies lied. The club caught his temple and everything went black. 12 hours later, he woke up tied to a wooden post inside their camp. His side bled, but the timer had expired while he was alive. That technicality saved him. The Frontier system translated their speech, loaded survival basics, and gave him a rough map. Next, he got medicine, 1 attribute point, and a black-bladed weapon called the Rift Cleaver axe. Great rewards, but terrible delivery. A broad-shouldered hunter named Tucker Ridgway controlled the camp. At 27, Tucker was powerful and obeyed. He pointed at Ryland's wound. He bleeds easily. Keep his things. Kill him if he acts up. Then, a camp woman looked Ryland over. She declared the fiercest man should father the strongest kids. If this stranger grew strong, she wanted his child. He had understood them for 10 seconds, and his dating life was already public business. Strength controlled food, safety, authority, and desire. Begging meant becoming prey. So he put his point in strength. Heat surged through his arms. He gripped the Rift Cleaver and snapped both ropes. The camp jumped back. Tucker did not. The human wall raised his stone club. Ryland rested the axe on his shoulder. Armed with 1 impossible axe in pure audacity, Tucker lifted his heavy club. He smiled. A smart man would stop checking, but the Frontier system had a penalty for his bluff. Subdue the camp now or lose the Rift Cleaver axe. Tucker charged forward. His weapon came down hard enough to crack the thick wooden post. He stepped aside and swung once. His Rift Cleaver sliced clean through the stone weapon, sending shattered pieces falling between Tucker's feet. The other hunters quickly lowered their spears. Even the tribal woman, who was just discussing their future marriage, lined forward. Perfect. The right crowd had seen the enemy's massive weapon shatter. Tucker ordered everyone forward. The entire camp charged him at once. 1 sharp spear scraped his shoulder. He shoved another hunter backward with the heavy axe handle, then kicked a third straight into the dry firewood. He raised the blade. Come closer, he warned. He might fall, but he is taking half of them down. The closest hunter froze and bolted. For a brief second, he thought his bold threat actually worked. But the system disagreed. Watch out, things just got incredibly dangerous. A deep growl rolled behind him. He spun around in absolute shock. Standing 10 feet away was a massive sabertooth, taller than his chest, with giant fangs hanging past its jaw. The hunters were actually fleeing from the beast. It lunged. He swung too early, and a heavy paw threw him across the dirt. Fighting it in the open was suicide. He needed a quick distraction. The beast flinched at flying embers, so he ran toward the bonfire. The giant cat chased him while the tribesmen watched their supposed god sprint by in total panic. public confidence ruined, but he reached. The flames, he grabbed a blazing branch and shoved it right toward its face. The monster backed off but kept circling. Suddenly, a colossal roar echoed from the deep woods. The ground shook. The predator flattened its ears and fled. Whatever made that sound absolutely terrified the beast. What could possibly be bigger? The first threat was gone, but the system awarded him 2 points. He put them into strength and agility, walking back with his axe resting. On his shoulder, Tucker stared in disbelief. The beast had fled. He shrugged, call it a scared kitty with confidence problems. No one laughed, they believed him. One hunter lowered his weapon, offering fresh water. A mother shielded her kid, then allowed the child to look. Tucker's face grew incredibly tense. He stood down, and the others did the same. He secretly applied some healing ointment to his ribs, quickly hiding the bottle. True power looks less impressive when everyone sees your bandages. The tribal woman returned and grabbed his arm, calling him a fierce survivor. Her broad smile made the tribe's mating rules very clear. It was quite a change of pace. His fantasy was definitely leaving the planning stage. Tucker stepped between them, but she just kept smiling over his broad shoulder. The chief growled, surviving one beast does not make this outsider their leader. He simply pointed his Rift Cleaver toward the chief's broken weapon. A nearby warrior picked up the shattered piece of the heavy club. Another pointed at the massive paw prints ending by the dying embers. He steps close enough to Tucker that only the big man can hear him. You can challenge me again, he whispers. This time nobody runs until one of us stays down. Tucker looks at his bleeding side, then his eyes drift to the axe, the burning branch. In the dark forest where the saber-tooth vanished, his hand slowly opens. Tucker lowers his gaze, muttering that the camp needs food first. He lets Tucker keep that scrap of pride. He needs a live commander, not another corpse. The frontier system marks the authority. Mission complete. Tucker backing down is proof enough. Several hunters lower their weapons completely. A woman brings scraps of cloth for his ribs. Another drags Tucker's broken club away from the center of camp. Smart man, a slow learner, but smart. The frontier system immediately hands him much harder mission, a civilization quest to build permanent homes and form a tribe of 50 people within 18 days. A population counter flashes on screen. Current population is 15 out of 50. He looks around the camp. 3 rough shelters lean around. A single dying fire. Uncovered meat scraps sit rotting. Nobody guards the river path. The system wants him to turn this camp into a real tribe. 14 people watch him. Some are terrified. Others want food. One woman even wants children. Tucker keeps eyeing his shattered club, but he has stopped reaching for it. The youngest hunter stands near the edge of the camp, quick, observant, and avoiding his gaze because he clearly remembers chasing him down by the river. His name will come soon enough. For now, he has an axe, a bleeding body, 14 suspicious strangers, and 18 days to find 35 more. Talk about pressure. He knows what being hunted feels like, and if these people choose him, he is not leaving them to be prey. The larger roar still waits beyond the trees. Tucker finally asks the question everyone else is avoiding. Where will he find 35 people? He answers calmly, Tucker, we won't find them one by one. Other groups already have members. We build something actually worth joining, then we make them choose us. A hunter near the hut grumbles that bringing in strangers only means more hungry mouths and dangerous knives. A campwoman answers first, saying more strong hunters bring more meat. Tucker crosses his arms, muttering that people follow strength and food. We have little food, he tells Tucker, so that is the very first problem we fix. We find land, control the food around it, and build homes people actually want to live in. A woman smiles at the word homes. He sees exactly where that is going and quickly avoids her gaze. One man who had chased him shifts nervously toward the trees the moment he looks at him. He points at him, declaring that anyone who hunted him this morning can pay their debt by helping tomorrow. Run from the work and Tucker will decide your fate. Tucker straightens up. He has given the former leader a real role in his new order. The nervous hunter steps back toward the fire and nobody else tries to run. They need safer land, dependable food, and nearby allies. He also cannot let Tucker see how much his broken ribs still hurt. The crude map confirms that this open riverbank leaves them completely exposed. Higher ground must come first. No more planning. Someone has to make a move. He lifts the heavy axe and fires off his first order. Eat, rest. At sunrise, they find a territory worth defending. Tucker watches him for a long moment, then he turns and repeats the command to the others. The man who bound Him is now carrying his orders throughout the camp, the frontier system. Still displays 15 of 50. Surviving alone was the easy part. Now he has to. His mission was to turn his former hunters into a tribe, then absorb other clans. All before the 18-day clock ran out. That night, hunger pulls him back toward the abandoned kill site outside camp. He had survived captivity, a gang attack, and even a saber-tooth, but he was still starving. Rude, the hunters had dropped a half butchered animal when a larger roar scattered them. He recovered the meat, carved out extra strips for the camp, and headed back before anything else. Smelled dinner. Suddenly the ground vanished beneath his foot. He dropped into a muddy hollow deeper than his knee. At first he thought he found a pit. Broken roots curved around the hollow. Another identical depression waited. Several yards ahead, it was a footprint, 5 broad toe marks pressed into the earth beneath him. The stride continued between broken trees, each print large enough to hold a sleeping man. The saber-tooth had run from something. Now he knew the forest also contained something big enough to leave holes in the ground by walking. Great neighborhood, very affordable, minor. He carried the meat home and slept beside the fire with his Rift Cleaver across his chest. The next morning the camp nearly fought itself. Apart over breakfast, 2 hunters grabbed the same strip and a third shoved between them. Tucker stepped forward like he planned to solve hunger by breaking someone's jaw. Our protagonist buried his axe blade in the chopping block. The loud crack stopped every hand. Hunters eat first, he told them. They bring back the next meal. Children and the injured eat next. Anyone who starts a fight eats last. Tucker studied him, then released the man he had grabbed. One rule, one clear consequence. Civilization had officially begun with meat and threats. The youngest adult hunter kept avoiding his eyes. His name was Colby Rivers. He was 19, quick on his feet, and smart enough to remember he had helped chase him beside the river. Colby lowered his head, asking if he would kill him after they eat. He tossed him some meat, telling him to guide him well and he would forget how annoying he had been. His shoulders loosened. Good, fear had stopped making him useless. He told the camp they needed a permanent home before the 18-day deadline ate them alive. A fearless woman pushed through the group and stopped close enough to make things personal. Her name was Emery Westfall, and she was 23. Strong through the shoulders and clearly unfamiliar with hesitation. Emery tilted her head, asking what a home was. He pointed east, a protected place near water and food where they could build, sleep without running, and raise the next generation safely. Once people stood with him, he would not let monsters keep treating them as prey. Emery's face lit up and she wrapped both arms around him and announced she would live in his home and give him strong children. The entire camp heard her. He had meant roofs, but she had skipped straight to the population plan. Tucker looked at him as if this was another divine technique. He refused to explain modern dating, mostly because his record back home did not support expert testimony. Colby saved him by pointing east. He knew a broad river delta beside the sea, where the ground rose behind it. Fish filled the water and trees covered the slopes. The place had water, food, and defensible high ground. Then Colby added that the cows there kill hunters. He almost laughed. Cows? Colby nodded with complete seriousness. Our protagonist had come from a world where cows only appeared on milk cartons. Hearing about free meat on legs, they traveled east that morning. Emery stayed close to him. Tucker kept the hunters spread out. Colby slowed down whenever the forest went quiet. Then one of the trees moved. Blackhorn pushed through the leaves. A shoulder followed, taller than he was. The creature stepped into the open, making the ground shake under its massive weight. The frontier system identified them as iron horn bulls, giant herd beasts with plated hides. Their skin looked like armor plates. Their horns curved forward like stone spears. More massive bodies moved behind the first, until the entire forest seemed crowded. Colby whispered that those were the cows. He stared, saying, "Your language has failed both of us." The river delta beyond them was perfect. Fresh water cut through rich ground. The sea opened to the south. A steep mountain guarded the western side. The future capital sat directly behind several tons of angry beef. He told the others to stay hidden while he inspected the herd. Tucker frowned, asking if he would go alone. He told Tucker that a king leads from the front. Privately, he was praying those cows respected political office. He moved along the tree line and threw a stone at the nearest bull. It struck the animal's horn. The bull turned. So did every other beast in the clearing. He had wanted one reaction, but get this, he got the premium family package instead. The herd charged. He sprinted toward the mountain while tree trunks cracked behind him. From the ridge, his people shouted as if he had volunteered to sacrifice himself for them. Highly touching but completely inaccurate. One bull caught the edge of his coat with a horn. He twisted free and reached the rocks. Another slammed into the mountain hard enough to shower him with stone. He climbed while the herd milled below, snorting and striking the slope. From the summit, he finally saw the whole eastern delta. The land could hold homes, fields, animals, and far more than 50 people. That mountain gave them a wall. The river and sea gave food. If he took this place, he could build something larger than a desperate camp. First, he had to evict the local landlords. When the herd moved, he climbed down and returned to the others. Tucker was halfway up a tree, searching the branches below for his Rift Cleaver. He threw the axe into the dirt beside him. He nearly fell, asking if he was looking for this. Tucker climbed down without looking at anyone, muttering he thought the bulls killed him. He called that a reasonable mistake. Do that again, he warned, and he starts charging Ren on his gear. Then he pointed toward the delta. They would return in 3 days. By then, they would have weapons that can kill those bulls. The camp stared at the herd, then at him. They looked at him like he had promised to punch the moon. Honestly, in 3 days, either the bulls died or his new authority did. Back at camp, he cut a young tree and split it into long poles. He hardened the points over heat and threw one into a trunk. His finished spear buried itself deeper than any bone dart. The frontier system awarded technology progress. More importantly, Tucker stopped looking at the weapon. Like firewood, the camp's heaviest and fastest hunters rushed him together. He slipped past the heavy swing, turned around the second man, and touched the blunt spear point to his ribs. Strength helps, he told them, but accuracy decides where it lands. They built a target from bark and practiced until the ground looked like a failed porcupine. Most throws missed. Tucker's first spear. One spear flies wild, nearly hitting a tree, but then one shaft strikes right in the center. The thrower is Bowen Harker, a quiet 24-year-old hunter. He had barely spoken all morning. The main character hands him 2 spears to train the others. Bowen stands tall. Meanwhile, Tucker looks pretty offended, at least for a split second. He quickly changes his mind, ordering the entire camp to copy Bowen's exact stance. Suddenly, the bushes explode. A massive, thick-bodied beast bursts into camp with low, dangerous tusks. With wild eyes, it charges the nearest woman. The main character shouts for the hunters to spread out. They need space instead of crowding. Bowen moves first, driving his spear right through its mouth. The strike forces the beast's head aside. Colby climbs a low branch, waiting for his moment. As it passes, he drives his spear down from above, yet the stubborn beast keeps charging. Our protagonist strikes from the side, burying his Rift Cleaver deep behind its shoulder. The beast drops. It crashes down hard enough to shake dust from the leaves. Nobody cheers right away. They just stare from the dead monster to Bowen's spear, then back to their own defensive lines. This simple formation just saved their lives. The main character points at Bowen, praising his throw. He tells everyone to learn from him. Then he looks at Colby, praising his solid timing. Colby grins. Instantly, Bowen is officially promoted to their very first public specialist. Seeing this, Tucker starts dividing the groups without even waiting for any orders. He immediately sets up the exact same formation for the next guard shift. Later that evening, Emery brings him a slab of raw meat. Their old fire has died. Ever since they hid from the Sabertooth, they have relied solely on natural fires. They have no clue how to start one. He simply spins a dry stick against wood. Smoke rises. He feeds the ambergris, breathing a fresh flame into life. The entire camp backs away in absolute awe. Tucker whispers that he can create the sun. He quickly corrects Tucker, joking about not hugging it. Suddenly, the system awards 10 technology points. This also unlocks a convenient way to recognize useful civilization relics later on. But for now, simple cooked meat is plenty. The delicious smell quickly draws everyone in. Emery watches him with newfound interest, as if creating fire just upgraded his husband potential. Colby carefully examines the dead beast. He discovers milk and tracks leading straight into the brush. The creature had babies. Hearing this, the system triggers a brand new domestication mission. He immediately tasks Colby and Emery with bringing the cubs back alive. Meanwhile, he starts weaving rope. Using grass and wooden rails, he constructs a sturdy pen before they even return. The second the pen is built, half the camp rushes inside, trying to claim a spot. One woman snatches the corner near his bed, while 2 hunters argue over the dry side. Tucker steps inside the gate, inspecting the wooden floor like he just bought a mansion. Emery returns carrying a squealing cub. staring at the crowd with absolute confusion. She asks why they are inside their home. Once again, every invention feels like a marriage proposal. He rubs his face in utter exhaustion, explaining that this place actually belongs to the pigs. Tucker looks deeply betrayed, asking if the pigs are seriously getting the strongest house. He points out that pigs become food that will not run away, unlike the survivors. They can leave whenever they want, mostly. That warning clears out the pen in seconds. He gives them one rule: keep these cubs alive and breeding so their food stops running. Once Emery and Colby place the babies inside, the system registers the mission as complete. The reward is a small pouch of salt and a recipe for fried clams. He asked for legendary civilization upgrades, but the system keeps trying to make him a chef. Late that night, he sits with Colby by the fire, asking where they can head next. 35 more people are needed. Before answering, Colby just stares at Ryland's scar. Does Ryland really forgive the river attack? He shrugs. Just guide me away, Colby. Dodge the next flying bone and they are even. Colby nods, moving closer. By the fire, he names nearby clans. Then Nola approaches. Nola Hayward joins them with dried meat, 25 and extremely fast-handed. She spots lies instantly. Colby begins describing 3 nearby factions. First, the Sunshore clan, peaceful traders living among the coconut trees. Next, Brackwater, violent swamp dwellers who fight over absolutely everything. Finally, Iron Peak, they boast the strongest, most terrifying warriors. They scare everyone away. Naturally, Ryland targets Sunshore first. Nola taps her dried meat. Peaceful people still need a real reason to follow. Ryland has the perfect answer. A massive pile of fresh bull meat should convince them. Nola smiles. She loves plans that leave others with 0 options. Suddenly, Emery sneaks up behind Ryland, wrapping her arms around him. Come with me right now, she whispers. I found something incredibly exciting. Nola raises an eyebrow. Colby suddenly finds the campfire very interesting. Ryland grabs Colby's arm and stands up. Urgent strategic walk time, he claims. Emery laughs while Ryland drags his scout into the pitch black. Their system progression looks great, his survival instincts not so much. Sunshore is the safest path to 50 men. Brackwater can wait. Iron Peak is out of their league, but first, a test. Ryland has 3 days to slaughter the Iron Horn herd and claim their territory. The next morning, Colby leads him south to spy on Brackwater. They watch from the cliffs, observing the pure chaos below. Over 30 people are savagely brawling over one fat, flightless bird. 2 men tear at the wings. A woman kicks one into the ocean. Their leader is useless, grabbing the leg. 1 fighter flees with a chunk. 3 others immediately chase him. No one is guarding anything. No shoreline guards, no scouts, impressive numbers but 0 brain cells. Colby whispers that they always fight like this, total anarchy. Ryland wants their numbers, but he also wants to stay alive. They are too divided for simple promises. Approaching them now is suicide. They would only see 15 hungry refugees and 1 ambitious idiot. Ryland wisely backs off and makes a quick decision. He tells Colby, bulls first, meat and weapons will make their offer impossible to refuse. Exactly, they have just 1 day left to finish crafting their arsenal. Back at camp, Bowen trains spear throwers, while Tucker organizes daily labor. The former rival who once tied Ryland to a post acts like a commander. Ryland hates his usefulness. Tucker hates how much he actually enjoys it. Peak male bonding. Ryland sets the women to carve stone spearheads. Steady hands beat brute force here. Soon, Emery crafts the first. Perfect double-edged blade. Instantly, the frontier system unlocks talent recognition. She tests the razor edge. It slices cleanly, defying rougher tools. The other women copy her technique. Nearby, Bowen targets a hanging. Grass ring perfectly. Tucker steps in to split up 2 arguing hunters. Into teams, shutting down all arguments. The system confirmed what the camp already suspected. Emery was their toolmaker, Bowen their top thrower, and Tucker a natural born. Leader by sunset, Emery had shaped over half of their upgraded spearheads. Her palms were rubbed raw, yet she kept reaching for another stone. He caught her. Wrist, you are done, he told her. Emery simply smiled and asked if he was worried about her hands or thinking about their future children again. Several women turned toward them. Nola looked from Emery's hands to his face, warning him to be careful. He told Nola that the tool was not the sharpest thing there, claiming he was just examining her craftsmanship. Nola nodded slowly, mocking him. In his defense, Emery had made an incredible spearhead. The weapon itself had plenty of strengths. He wrapped her bleeding palms, ordered someone else to take over, and counted their stock, 30. Upgraded weapons. Honestly, 30 sounds decent until you remember. The herd had way more bodies than they had good throws. Their last advantage grew. Right next to camp as a cluster of dark leaves, the frontier system identified their sap as a powerful paralytic. It also warned that the poison could seep through any open cut. Nola raised her scraped finger, joking about the secret weapon being a poisonous salad. He warned Nola that touching it would put her to sleep. Right through the upcoming battle, she passed the grinding bowl to someone else immediately. The women crushed the black leaves, coating every sharp stone point, the strongest hunters. Rested Tucker positioned Bowen with their best throwers and kept the remaining spears bundled up by count. Their strategy had 4 key parts: high ground, poison tips, 3 wounded bulls as bait, and 1 dead boss. They only had 30 upgraded weapons, 15 fighters, and 0 backup supplies if those first throws failed. He had Tucker count every single spear again. Bowen assigned the sharpest throwers to the narrow side of the ridge. Emery kept the poison tips covered until the final moment, so nobody brushed against them by accident. Every single detail was finally ready, people. Poison spears and the terrain. Now, the real question was whether the herd would actually cooperate. At dawn, they reached the mountains overlooking the eastern river delta. The women and wounded workers hunkered down behind a rocky ledge with spare spears. Bowen fanned out his throwers along the ridge. Tucker held the center while Kobe watched the tree line, signaling the herd's advance. The leader headed downhill alone. Tucker grabbed his arm, asking who leads if he dies. The leader replied, "You." Tucker's grip tightened. Then he grinned, telling him to keep him alive because he did not trust his interior design. Tucker let go with a disgusted look. The heavy tension broke for just one quick breath. Then the first iron horn beast emerged from the forest. He stepped into the open, slamming his Rift Cleaver against a hard boulder. The loud echo boomed across the entire valley. "Come on," he shouted, yelling that he promised his people breakfast. Outwardly, he looked fearless, but inside, his body was screaming to run. 3 massive bulls broke from the herd and charged. He waited until their sharp horns filled his vision, then dashed toward the narrow slope. Just beneath the ridge, the very first poison spear struck a bull's shoulder joint. The beast jerked toward the attacker, exposing its soft neck to the fighters on the opposite ridge. Bowen's spear slammed directly beneath the second bull's jaw. That massive animal crashed into the first one, blocking the narrow bottleneck for a few crucial seconds. Tucker capitalized on this opening, yelling for everyone to target the third bull's front leg. 4 spears struck almost at once. The third bull stumbled hard, but it kept dragging itself over the fallen bodies. The paralytic poison worked slower than he wanted. Each massive beast had enough weight to keep moving during the spread. Positioning decided everything. A sharp horn gouged the earth near his heel, sending him jumping back and landing badly. Sliding down loose rock, Tucker dropped from the ridge, grabbed his forearm, and yanked him sideways before the bull crushed them, yelling a loud reminder to keep him alive. He praised his excellent listening. Then Tucker turned to the hunters and took command, telling Bowen to hold the left side. "Save the center spears," he ordered. Everyone moved before panic could spread. The first bull collapsed on its legs, while another rolled against a boulder. Only the third beast remained standing, wounded and furious. Tucker drove a spare spear deep behind its knee. Bowen struck the mouth again until the bull finally dropped. With its horn buried in the slope, 3 targets, 3 bodies down. Their plan had paid off once. The crowd cheered, but get this, those trees were suddenly moving. Roughly 20 more bulls entered the valley. They had 28 usable spears left. Hunter raised his arm to throw, but he knocked the point down, yelling to save them. The herd one by one will only empty their hands first. Colby pointed toward the rear as the bull king emerged from the forest, standing far taller than the others, and carried thick scars across its plated hide. Its horns were wide enough to split a tree. Hot steam rolled from its nostrils each time it breathed. The herd did not rush them, spreading around the wounded beasts to watch the ridge. He held up his hand. Every thrower waited. The bull king stared at their high ground to the wounded animals, then paced sideways until it found the mountains. Weakest face, that was the first sign the boss understood the trap. He had expected rage, but it gave him patience. Then the bull king lowered its head and slammed into the mountain, cracking stone beneath his feet. The entire herd followed, 20 iron horn bodies striking the slope in waves. The ridge shook, spears rolled toward the edge. Hunters dropped flat, grabbing roots as one impact split the Ledge beneath Bowen, Tucker pulled him back by his belt, another strike knocked. Two wrapped spear bundles down toward the herd, Emery and another woman caught. The last bundle together right before it slid over, the Bull King had found the one target his poison could not paralyze, which was the mountain, a section of the ridge tore. Way and Emery lost her footing, sliding down with the collapsing stone. He jumped right after her, catching her around the waist before she struck the lower ledge. They hit together, rolled through thick dust, and stopped on the exposed slope below their safe position. Above them, Tucker shouted for the others to spread. Bowen kept the remaining throwers firing at joints and eyes. The supply team pushed spare spears down instead of fleeing. The plan had broken, but his people kept fighting. Then the Bull King climbed through the collapsed stone, opening its mouth. A blast of fire and scorching air tore across the slope, blackening grass and forcing everyone apart. Colby had called these things cows. He fully intended to complain if they survived. The boss struck him with a horn and threw him into broken stone. His ribs screamed as the Rift Cleaver left his hand. The Bull King turned toward the weapon as if it understood what had wounded its herd. Then it planted one hoof on the handle, forcing him to choose between the weapon and the people behind it. One of Tucker's strongest warriors drove his spear into the beast's flank. The Bull King kicked him across the slope. Dunnar, Tucker's fastest spearman, dragged the wounded fighter clear and took a nasty scrape across his thigh. Instantly, the Bull King turned toward the injured men. Tucker stepped directly into its path, slapping his spear against its plated nose. The spear glanced off the armor, buying a single second. Bowen used it to drive shaft deep into the soft flesh beneath its eye. The boss snapped toward him. Tucker rolled clear, shouting for everyone to abandon the armor, targeting the exact same wound. Ryland grabbed the legendary Rift Cleaver and charged its bleeding flank. His axe widened the gap around the hunter's spear. Bowen hit the exact same spot. From above, Duncan threw his spear while dragging the wounded man with one arm. The supply crew rolled fresh spears down the slope as fast as hands could grab them. Stone points dug into that single wound from 3 directions. The Bull King staggered. Ryland scrambled onto its massive shoulder, burying the Rift Cleaver deep and twisted with all the power the frontier system gave him. The beast crashed onto its side. Dust rolled over the lower slope. The fire died in its throat, and the nearest bull froze mid-stride. For one long second, the valley went silent. Then his people cheered. Tucker raised his shattered spear. Bowen dropped to one knee. Emery reached Ryland through the dust, grabbing his arm. They had won, except the herd did not run. Every single remaining bull stood in place. Their heads stayed low, eyes completely locked onto their king. Ryland stared back at the massive body beneath him. A leg twitched. The Bull King rose. Cheers died out one by one as they realized the horrific truth. At different speeds, the beast shook Ryland off, tearing a spear from its own wound with its teeth clamping its jaws around the shaft. Ryland tried to stand, but his left leg buckled. The Bull King snapped its head forward, launching the spear straight at his chest. Emery threw herself between them. The stone point tore through her side and hurled her body into his. Ryland caught her before she fell. The entire valley froze. Emery had trusted him when he promised a home. Now he let a monster make her prey. Blood pooled beneath his hands. Her fingers gripped his wrist weakly, whispering that he still owed her that home. Then her grip slipped away. The frontier system flashed a glowing warning across his vision. Rift Cleaver sealed output available. Warning that forced release will overload his body. The choice was simple: hold back and watch the Bull King slaughter his people, or pay with whatever his body had left. He laid Emery behind a rock and stood. Tucker reached out, telling Ryland he could barely walk, but Ryland told him to keep everyone far away from the axe. Ryland forced the sealed output open. The black blade transformed in his hands. Pale lines ran through the metal as the Rift Cleaver wakened into its sealed form. The World Cleaver axe. Pure power hit his arms hard, enough to rip old wounds open. His vision narrowed. The Bull King charged through the choking dust. Ryland met it head-on, bringing the World Cleaver down between its horns, splitting its massive armored body in one clean, continuous strike. The Bull King slammed into the ground behind him, never to rise again. Every remaining bull stopped. He pulled the axe free, faced the remaining herd, and screamed until blood filled his mouth, shouting that their king was dead. None of them dared step forward. The first bull backed away, then another turned. Within seconds, the entire herd broke. The first bull backed away, then another turned, and within seconds, the herd broke and thundered into the eastern forest, their retreat changing the entire valley. Hunters who spent their lives hiding from the herd now stood in the open and watched it run from them. Bowen lowered his spear with both hands shaking. Tucker looked from the dead king to him, finally done arguing about who led. Then Emery let out a weak sound behind him, and the triumph instantly faded. Tucker dropped beside her as Bowen and Duncan dragged the wounded warrior away from the slope. The women tore open their medicine wrap, while Colby kept pressure on Emery's wound. They owned the land now, with enough meat to last months. The herd's strongest beast lay dead at his feet, but Emery was bleeding behind him. Then the overload hit, crushing the air from his lungs. He coughed blood onto his black blade and fell to one knee, ordering them to treat Emery first. The women screamed his name. His vision tilted, and his strength faded so fast that the axe felt heavier than the bull. The last thing he saw was Tucker catching his weapon before it struck the stone, shouting for the others to carry Emery first. Good, he had understood the only order that mattered. Then he blacked out. He thought killing the Bull King made him look untouchable, but 4 days later he still couldn't stand, and a queen with twice his people was marching toward his camp. 4 days after he killed the Bull King, he woke inside a wooden shelter he had never seen before. His first attempt to sit up ended instantly, the pain folding him back onto the bedding as the frontier system displayed the damage in one cheerful line. 11 days remaining, population 15 of 50, and those 4 days had totally vanished. While he was unconscious, the system apparently watching him sleep while keeping the clock running. Talk about supportive. Then Tucker Ridgway pushed through the door. Before he could try again, the man who once tied him to a post now looked exhausted from keeping his settlement alive. He grabbed his wrist. Emery. Tucker answered immediately. She's alive. The medicine stopped the bleeding. She wakes, eats, and insults anyone who tells her to rest. A shadow moved behind him, revealing Nola supporting Emery at the doorway. She looked pale beneath fresh bandages, but she was awake. Emery reached across the bedding and touched his wrist. You ordered medicine for me first. You took the spear first, he answered. Emery held his eyes for a moment, then nodded. Nola guided her back before either of them tried something stupid. Duncan survived his thigh wound. Tucker's heavy hunter had also lived. Several people could barely work, and he couldn't stand without seeing white. The land was theirs, and the meek could feed them for months. Their victory had made them look rich at the exact moment they were easiest to kill. Then Tucker gave him the worst news. Sunshore had heard about the bulls. He warned him their queen might come. Sunshore had nearly twice their population. If their queen saw 15 exhausted survivors and one king shaped like a broken chair. His recruitment plan was cooked. Since he couldn't fight, he had to make 15 battered people look like an army. Inside his medicine pouch, only one useful dose remained. He closed it. That ointment could keep him standing later or save another person. Spending it to make his ribs complain less would have been pure luxury, and since he was living in a hut, he gave Tucker just one order at a time. The injured stayed out of sight while the strongest workers finished the houses. Duncan recovered the dead Bull King's hide, skull, horns, and the cleanest bones. Colby closely watched the eastern trail and scrutinized every approaching stranger. Near their camp, no one knew the entire plan. Tucker crossed his arms, asking what the chief would do. Adjusting blankets over his paralyzed legs, he calmly replied, "Look terrifying." Tucker stared back. Honestly, the chief had to tell Tucker to keep expectations realistic. Then he requested Nola Hayward be sent inside alone. Nola entered the shelter, pushing the entrance flap shut while slowly eyeing the bed. Then she slid a heavy hide strap off her shoulder to make the chief pay attention. She teased. The chief almost hurt himself scrambling to sit up, warning her to keep her clothes on. This was a diplomatic mission after all. Nola refastened her strap, looking quite insulted, muttering that he should have said so first. To be fair, he had called their sharpest woman into a private shelter while resting half-naked under furs. Honestly, her assumption made total sense. The chief explained why Nola was perfect for this. Sunshore preferred trade over warfare, and a woman could approach their queen without seeming like a hostile male challenger. Colby knew the paths well and could spot threats from miles away. Nola listened quietly until he handed her some thin strips of dried fish. She held them up, questioning if this was their grand offering. "Let them laugh," he replied, "then tell their queen they have more bull meat than their entire clan could ever carry." Nola grinned, loving plans where enemies underestimated her. With somebody underestimating her, at dawn, Nola and Colby set off, taking the river route towards Sunshore, recounting later how they were ambushed near a Bathing spring, suddenly, hidden tribal women surrounded them. With sharp spears, Colby surrendered, but Nola, she kept chewing that fish. As if capture was planned, they dragged them straight to the queen of the largest regional clan, the formidable Tamsin. Lockwood at 27, she wrapped a braided hide whip around her wrist while her hunters watched closely for any weakness. Tamsin stared at the dry fish in Nola's hand, mocking that her king had sent scraps. Several guards laughed, but Nola bit through the final piece, replying that it was proof they could preserve food while others starved, the real gift awaited them at their camp. Tamsin tapped her whip against her palm, and what did their tiny camp possess that Sunshore actually needed? Nola answered, a mountain of ironhorn meat. The laughter died instantly. Colby added that their people had slain the massive bull king and successfully seized the eastern river delta, keeping his claim simple. Nola, however, brought the attitude, saying Tamsin could call them liars from her chair, or she could march east and struggle to haul back all the food they were offering. Tamsin stood up. Nola's bold gamble had worked. The very next afternoon, Colby sprinted back ahead of the Sunshore party to signal them. Tucker dragged the chief outside. Duncan and other workers draped the giant beast's heavy hide over the chief's shoulders, then secured the horned skull right above his head. The massive weight nearly crushed his ribs, but Tucker carefully lowered him onto a wooden seat by the hearth. Behind him stood polished spears, penned boars, stacked hides, and the sturdy wooden frames of rising houses. The mountain of meat did the rest, with massive carcasses covering the cleared hillside. Billowing smoke rose from numerous drying racks. Laborers hauled giant meat slabs larger than a toddler, while wounded warriors hid deep in the brush. As Tamsin approached, a nearby bush rustled. The chief hissed quietly, warning them that if anyone bled on his stage, he would personally drag them back to bed soon. The shaking finally stops as Tamsin enters, flanked by armed women. A whip hangs from her hip. She is gorgeous, highly confident, and sizes up the chief's settlement, clearly hunting for whatever trick lies underneath. That dangerous combination threatens his overall strategy and common sense. Nola announces her as Tams of Sunshore, here to see if the young chief had exaggerated his claims. Tamsin glances at the massive beast carcasses, admitting he barely exaggerated at all. Her voice holds no more mockery. Suddenly, one of her warriors steps toward the meat pile and hacks at a thick slab with a stone knife. The edge chips instantly. She tries once more, only for the blade to shatter. Tucker flashes a smug, provocative smile, usually seen right before a fight. The Sunshore warrior shoves him, claiming he used some trick to weaken the hide. Tucker shoves back, mocking her weak blade. Suddenly, several spears are raised. The wounded chief cannot stand in time, so he unleashes his only viable option. He hurls his black-bladed axe straight across the clearing. It cleaves cleanly through a hanging bull rib, burying itself deep in the dirt. Right between Tucker and the warrior, tension freezes both sides. The severed rib drops in two clean pieces. Tamsin looks from the broken knife to his axe. Her hand tightens around her whip. When she speaks next, all traces of humor are gone. Leaning back beneath the bull's skull, the chief tells her to take whatever meat they can. If Sunshore allies with him, he promises to teach her people to forge proper weapons. Tamsin steps closer, noting he offers weapons before she agrees to follow. He replies that it was a future offer. Today they only get lunch. Nola hides a smile, then intense pain tears across his side. The axe throw just reopened his massive bull wound. Warm blood immediately soaks through his bandages. Tamsin notices his injury. Nola quickly steps directly between them, shoving a strip of salted meat right into Tamsin's hand. Nola urges her to taste it first, teasing that their king gets grumpy if ignored. Tamsin stares at Nola for a beat, then bites into the savory meat, quickly taking another. The salt works nicely. He uses the distraction to press a folded hide wrap against his bleeding side. Tamsin finishes the strip, refusing to submit so easily. Sunshore will not kneel simply because some wounded stranger possesses a sharp axe. They have unseen strengths. She definitely noticed something, though he cannot tell how much. Refusing to explain, he simply tells her to bring a larger crowd next time. After all, secrets are easier to keep that way. Throughout dinner, Tamsin studies him intensely. Her gaze becomes annoying before she finally orders her crew to gather their meat and depart. Before stepping away into the forest, Tamsin looks back at Nola, praising her wit. Sunshore has a place for her, but her loyalties are clear. She stands firmly beside the chief. She works for the man with the meat mountain. Tamsin looks between them, hoping that the chief appreciates her. Nola waits patiently until Sunshore disappears into the dark forest. Instantly, she lifts his cloak, spots the blood, and smacks his shoulder. He immediately regrets. Wincing, he asks if that was necessary as she reties his wrap. She counters, asking if throwing his weapon was truly necessary. It did look impressive, though. Nola teases, asking which one he wanted to impress. He jokingly replies, whichever one. Is currently stopping the bleeding. She pulls the knot tighter, rejecting his joke. Tamsin departs with loads of meat, deep doubts, and every reason to spy on them. Later, one of her scouts would reveal what she reported that night. She had witnessed structured houses. Penned beasts controlled fire, advanced metallurgy, and almost no visible weaknesses. Clearing paths to block any closer look, Tamsin whipped her scout once for returning with excuses, then sent the Watchers right back. A tiny clan should not have owned that much food or technology. At the camp that evening, Colby entered the chief's shelter with muddy knees and broken twigs. Sunshore. Watchers, Colby reported. They had tracked every last one. Colby had moved the workers, blocked the easiest paths, and kept every injured person out of there. Sightlens, the spies saw only what the chief wanted them to see. He handed Colby a strip of salted meat. Good work. Colby looked disappointed, expecting some actual useful rewards. The chief pointed east. Earn the real one. Find the surviving herd. Without spooking it, and he would craft a scout's blade from bullhorn. That restored the grin. Nola sat by the door. Phase 2, she noted. He answered that she already did her part. Let Tamsin wonder. He gave her nothing more. 2 days. Later, the chief could stand for short stretches without blacking out. Inside the storage shed, he inspected the black axe. The frontier system confirmed that the bull battle had awakened its sealed identity. World Cleaver Axe. The name was impressive, but his cracked ribs remembered the heavy price. He kept the final ointment untouched. Then he carved bullbone into small gifts, shaping one horn into a whistle, then waited while Tucker finished building the houses. Tucker presented them. Before sunset, one wall lagged, a roof corner leaked. Tucker stood beside those structures like he had personally invented property ownership. An entire family can sleep inside each, he proudly announced. The chief walked around the first house, pressing one post. The whole wall creaked. Tucker slapped his hand away. Do not test it. Like the Bull King, the frontier system credited those completed homes with technological progress. The people cheered and started carrying bedding inside. Even before Tucker finished bragging, those crooked walls could now shelter the people the chief meant to recruit. Then Colby came running from the eastern trail. He stopped right in front of him, breathing hard. He found the surviving herd. They are still together. Every conversation around them ended. The chief put the bullhorn whistle in Tucker's hand. When Sunshore returns, take the team east, he ordered. Use this to move the lead bull and direct the hunters. No one changes the route and no one chases a glory kill. Tucker closed his fist around the whistle. If Sunshore spots you, the plan dies, the chief answered, so do not get seen. He gave Nola, Colby, Tucker, and the others only the piece each needed. The first display had convinced Tamsin that his small tribe might be dangerous. Now here's where his plan really gets crazy. The next morning, a lookout spotted Tamsin returning with enough Sunshore warriors to empty his meat racks. Tucker and Colby slipped east before her group entered their clearing. Tamsin scanned the clearing for both men. She had seen them before, but the chief distracted her with 40 portions of salted bull meat and a wooden house to inspect. Suspicion had to compete with lunch. Nola met the visitors beside their largest house, spreading her arms to welcome them to the king's palace. The roof leaned slightly to the left. Tamsin looked at it, then at the chief. This is a palace, he told her, a temporary palace. His builders were still negotiating with straight lines. A flush touched Tamsin's face before she hid it. Tucker was far east, but he probably would have felt that insult. Tamsin stepped inside. The finished walls blocked the wind, and a raised sleeping platform kept bedding off the ground. Smoke drifted through a gap in the roof that Tucker swore was intentional. Her fingers brushed the wooden frame. Nola had told him Sunshore still slept beneath open shelters and palm roofs. Tamsin traced their solid frame a second time. Tamsin turned to Nola. Bring your skills to Sunshore and command my people. Nola leaned against the doorway. Your people tried to arrest me beside a bathing spring, but Ryland gave me meat and an audience. His recruiting method has better benefits. Tamsin's mouth curved. You defend him pretty quickly. Nola replied, I defend useful investments. Both women looked at him. He had survived a bull king, but this felt way riskier. Tamsin walked around him once, slowly, her whip hanging loose. You sit quite often for a man who claims Great strength, she observed. His wound tightened beneath the bullhide cloak. He smiled, replying he stands when something deserves the effort. Tamsin flicked her wrist. The whip looped around his forearm, crossed his chest, and yanked him against a support post before he could protect his ribs. Pain flashed behind his eyes. He kept smiling because Sunshore warriors were watching through the open doorway. Tamsin stepped close. Does this deserve the effort? In his defense, she was gorgeous, furious, and holding a whip. He was enjoying this far too much to think. Clearly, he caught the leather between two fingers. You came for food, tying up. The cook seems pretty short-sighted. Tamsin pulled once. A king should escape his own palace. He could have forced the issue and reopened his wounds. Instead, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. A queen should ask before putting ropes on. A wounded man. Her eyes dropped down to his hidden bandage for one brief second. Nola stepped through the doorway carrying a platter. She stopped cold. Tamsin had him pinned to a post while he held the whip. They stood much too close for an innocent explanation. Nola looked at the meat, then at them. Should I come back after the alliance ceremony? Tamsin released her grip immediately, and he rubbed his wrist. Bring the food, save the judgment. Nola handed him the platter. I brought both. Outside, the feast began. Salt changed the whole mood. Sunshore women bit into smoky meat, stopped talking, then reached for second portions. Children followed the scent between the houses. Hunters who had arrived gripping spears ended up guarding their plates instead. One Sunshore child stared at the cooking fire until one of Ryland's hunters handed her a warm strip. Her mother tried to pull her back, then tasted the meat herself. Moments later, both were sitting beside his people. Tamsin tasted one piece and looked annoyed that it was excellent. He raised his own portion. Careful, our dangerous secret is seasoning. She pointed the whip handle at him. Your dangerous secret is that mouth. You keep coming back to hear it. Nola coughed. Tamsin's face warmed, and the queen bit into the meat hard enough to end the exchange. The feast kept Sunshore at his settlement. Tucker and Colby later told him what happened east of Sunshore while they ate. Colby found the surviving iron horn herd resting between two wooded slopes. Tucker's team stayed downwind, covering their faces with mud and bullhide. Colby struck the lead beast with a poisoned spear. Tucker sounded the horn whistle from the western gap. The wounded bull charged the noise. The herd followed its blood. Fueled by panic, whenever the beasts started turning north, Colby appeared along the tree line and drove them west again. Tucker's hunters targeted only the lead animals, keeping up their retreat towards Sunshore territory. The wounded lead bull kept charging straight towards Sunshore, with the rest of the herd following. Back at the feast, a Sunshore scout burst through the trees without a spear. Her arm hung awkwardly from her shoulder, and blood covered her face. Queen Tamsin, the scout gasped. The black bulls are inside our camp. Every Sunshore fighter dropped her food. Tamsin ran west before the scout even finished. Nola grabbed his cloak, warning that he could barely hold himself together. He pulled free, telling her to keep him together. They followed the Sunshore group through the deep forest. By the time he reached their camp, the trap had become a total disaster. Huts lay crushed under broken palms. A bull dragged in entire roof frame on its horn. Wounded people crawled toward the spring while hunters threw stone spears that bounced off plated hides. Children were screaming. He had orchestrated this disaster, and their fear was terrifyingly real. Tamsin attacked the new herd leader before her warriors could surround it. Her whip snapped around one horn as she tried to pull the beast away from the injured. The bull jerked its head, and Tamsin left the ground, flying over the broken shelter. Lined toward the hard ground, he forced his legs to move, desperately launching himself forward to catch her around the waist, hitting the dirt hard on his injured side. The impact knocked the wind out of him, Tamsin landing heavily across his chest. She was stunned but alive. For a second, neither moved. Then she looked down at him. She noted he finally stood for something worthy. He coughed, saying she was heavier than her confidence suggested. Tamsin shoved herself upright and reached for the whip, but he caught her wrist, warning that attacking the herd would kill her. He had to handle the leader himself. Both of their clans heard him as Tucker's fighters entered from the eastern forest with faces hidden under mud and torn hides. They flanked the wounded bulls while Bowen's throwers targeted their soft joints. He stood tall in the dead bull king's cloak, raising the world Cleaver axe. The new herd leader spotted the horned skull above him and stopped. The beast raised its nose toward the dead king's hide, backing away as it snorted toward the others. The nearest bulls hesitated as he struck his axe against stone, shouting that their old king died under this blade. Try me. His voice sounded stronger than his body felt. The lead bull turned first. The wounded beasts followed close behind, Tucker's team pressing hard on their rear until the herd thundered out of Sunshore territory. The camp fell silent, except for quiet crying and broken wood settling. Tamsin stared at the empty path. Her whip lowered. The plan had worked because he made their fear real, but it felt terrible. He faced the displaced families, telling them his settlement had houses and food, and room for their wounded, urging them to move now and judge him later. Tamsin looked at the ruined shelters, then at the people he had just saved. From the very crisis he had created, her jaw tightened in silence. One elderly Sunshore hunter refused to move, claiming this was home. A broken roof collapsed behind her, sending ash across the clearing. Tamsin caught the woman by both shoulders, telling her that the people are the home. Carry the injured first. Following Ryland's people, Sunshore obeyed. Their injured moved out first and the rest followed his hunters east. By evening, every Sunshore survivor had reached their settlement. Nola placed families inside the brand new houses, while Emery, still bandaged and unable to lift much, sat near the entrances, directing bedding, water, and food with frightening efficiency. Soon, one Sunshore mother tried giving her portion to a child. Emery split the meat, handing half back. Eat, she needs you standing, he insisted. Tam watched her people sleep behind solid walls while their guards took the outer paths. The queen had lost her camp in one afternoon. His ugly houses had become the safest place she owned. Several Sunshore fighters stayed awake beside the doors, their spear points faced the forest now. The day before, those same points had faced them. The next morning, Tamsin met the chief in the central clearing. Her fighters stood behind her. His own stood behind Tucker. Nobody had forgotten the ruined Sunshore homes. Join their settlement, the chief told Tamsin, promising she would remain their direct leader. His weapons, houses, food, and protection would be theirs, but he leads the tribe. Tamsin's fingers tightened around the whip. She refused to order her people to surrender just because they slept under his roof for one night, then give them a result they can judge, he replied. Tamsin pointed directly at Tucker. One fight. Your commander against my champion, she challenged. The winner sets the terms. He accepted. Tamsin called forward Kasha Ridley, her 24-year-old fiercest guard. Kasha carried a stone knife in each hand, looked past Tucker at him, and said, Sunshore won't belong to you. Tucker just rolled one shoulder. One fighter. Sunshore finally learned counting. Kasha answered to keep talking, wanting his last words to be highly embarrassing. Good, he replied. They disliked each other instantly. Before the duel, he sent Bowen onto the nearest roof with one spear. Bowen asked for his target. He told him the first person who breaks the rule. The duel began. Kasha moved faster, but Tucker controlled space. She slashed his forearm, then tried to slip behind him. Tucker caught her wrist, drove his shoulder into her chest, and threw her across the dirt. Sunshore shouted for Kasha. His people answered for Tucker. Kasha rolled up and attacked low. Tucker blocked one knife with his spear shaft and kicked the second from her hand. Her heel hit his knee. Tucker dropped, but he kept his spear between them. Then, a second Sunshore warrior rushed from the crowd and struck Tucker behind the shoulder. That made it 2 against 1, and Tucker stumbled. Kasha looked at the opening beside him, but she did not attack Tucker. She ran straight at the chief. He stayed completely still as Kasha crossed half the clearing with one knife raised. Bowen's spear dropped from the roof and struck through her upper side. The impact turned her body, driving her into the dirt several feet. From his chair, Tucker spun on the second fighter, knocking her flat with the spear shaft. Instantly, Sunshore warriors raised their weapons. One of them shouted that the roof fighter cheated. He stood despite the pain. 2 of their fighters had just attacked one man, he told them. Then their champion targeted him, so they should never speak of fairness again. His hunters closed around Bowen's position. Sunshore moved toward Kasha, and one wrong move would have sparked a bloodbath. War shook the new settlement. Tamsin stepped between them and cracked his knuckles. She cracked her whip across the dirt. Nobody moved. She faced her own warriors. They lost. The moment that second warrior jumped Tucker, it was over. Kasha's strike at Ryland was a blatant assassination, pure shame. The warrior bowed her head. Tamsin knelt down beside Kasha. Blood pooled. The spear wound was deep. Kasha's breathing grew shallow. Tamsin looked up at Ryland, her desperate voice cracking as she pleaded. She begged him not to execute her and to use his healing medicine. Yesterday she had bound him to a post. Now she begged for a warrior's life. He only had one tiny dose left. Even though Kasha tried to kill him, he opened the pouch. He pulled the spear shaft out and prepared a thin layer of ointment. Ryland pressed the torn wound closed. The powerful medicine began working. It slowed the bleeding. He had barely anything left for himself. Within minutes, color returned to Cash's face. The Sunshore women gathered close. They touched her bandages and stared at Ryland like he was a god. Slowly, weapons lowered. An elder mother stepped forward and dropped her spear. Another woman quickly copied her, then a third. The pile of weapons grew. By the time Ryland offered Tamsin his hand, a whole row of stone points lay in the dirt. He reached out to help her up. Tamsin took his hand and stood. He pulled her into a tight, one-armed embrace before she could react. She stiffened but rested a hand on his shoulder instead of shoving him away. He whispered that she would keep direct command of the Sunshore people. But inside the merged tribe, his word was final. Everything would be shared. The clans cheered. Tucker blew his horn while Nola moved quickly. She set up shared guard posts, integrating their fighters seamlessly. The merger was complete, but Tamsin suddenly stepped back to speak. She raised her voice, announcing her final condition to the crowd. Ryland Wilder had to partner with her for the upcoming full moon ceremony. He eagerly agreed before even asking what that ceremony actually involved. That was a massive mistake. Several Sunshore women smirked knowingly. He had just signed up for something completely unexplained. The cheering ended. The system began calculating their updated population. They were at 46 out of 50, meaning they were still 4 short. They needed those 4 people before the deadline, or everything would fail. Then the system asked Ryland to choose a name for their new tribe. He looked at the patched-up roofs and the people who were enemies yesterday. Rookie tribe, he declared. Tucker frowned, asking what that meant. Someone new who survives long enough to become deadly. Tucker accepted that instantly. The new name echoed through the camp. The Sunshore families moved into houses, sharing fire and food. Former rivals ate together, while Tamsin stood close by Ryland's side. Everyone chanted the new name. For a brief second, the merger felt perfect. But then Ryland overheard 2 women whispering about the ceremony. The old queens apparently consumed their partners afterward for strength. Sometimes they even butchered the man first. He gasped in horror. His sweet marriage fantasy shattered before any honeymoon could even start. He agreed to be Tamsin's partner. Sunshore thought a partner and a ceremonial snack belonged in the same job description. He was the male. Praying mantis of this primitive era, a volunteer basically, he backed away from the women and nearly walked into Emery. She was still wrapped around the side where the spear hit. Her grin looked healthy. She asked if he changed his mind about Tamsin. He was just gathering information, Ryland said. Emery jumped in. Choose me instead. I have never eaten a partner. Strong offer. Excellent timing. Nola grabbed Emery by the shoulders and steered her toward the nearest house. You can barely walk, Nola told her. Stop trying to win. A husband through competitive cannibalism. Emery looked back at Ryland. My offer stays open, she yelled. Nola glanced back. Mine comes with organized storage and 0 ritual knives. Emery stopped. You have an offer too. Nola kept pushing her forward. I have options. Emery and Nola were now competing with a woman who was not even there. Talk about drama. The next morning he found Tamsin alone beside the drying racks. Her whip was tied at her waist. Tamsin smiled when she saw Ryland approaching first. He skipped the romantic opening. Did Sunshore queens really kill and eat their partners? Tamsin stared at him for 2 breaths. Then she laughed so hard she had to grab the rack. He hated being the punchline in his own survival question. Tamsin finally straightened. Some past queens followed that custom, she said. They believed consuming a powerful partner added his strength to theirs. A very efficient tradition, Ryland muttered. She stepped close and hooked one finger beneath the edge of his bold cloak. She had never taken a partner and did not plan to kill her first one. Ryland's shoulders loosened, then her finger tightened against the hide. Betray her, she warned, and he would discover why the rumor survived. His relief lasted 2 seconds. Tam was still Tamsin. Ryland told her good. He preferred dangerous women with clear policies. She smiled, noting he preferred dangerous women and the rest was just an excuse. The evidence was becoming difficult to dispute. The frontier system interrupted before he could lose that argument. 7 days remaining. Population 46 of 50. The marriage question had an answer, but the clock still showed 7 days, so he went south that morning to find the Blackwater clan. Colby guided him along the beach while the tide pulled away from dark sand. They expected shouting, fighting or somebody chasing stolen meat. Instead, they found silence. The first body lay beside an overturned cooking pit. More were scattered between the huts. Some had spear wounds, others carried deep claw marks across their backs and faces. Two bodies still gripped each other, and the blood around them was fresh enough to darken the sand. The settlement had been destroyed recently. The wounds made it look like Blackwater had turned on itself after another force attacked. He needed 4 recruits. The beach had only given him bodies. Colby knelt beside a broken spear. These people fought one another before he could answer. Branches snapped behind them. One of their scouts stumbled onto the beach. Breathing hard, Ryland, survivors from Blackwater are attacking our settlement. Tucker cannot hold them alone. They had found the survivors. They were attacking them. They ran north. By the time Ryland reached their settlement, Tucker's fighters had. They formed a line between the houses and animal pens. Tamsin and the Sunshore warriors reinforced both ends, but the Blackwater survivors had lost all traces of the rowdy brawlers he once watched over the dodo. They charged like starving beasts. One man took a hard spear shaft to the jaw and kept running, while a woman slammed her shoulder right through 2 defenders. Then she clawed at their hide armor, ignoring the weapon lying right beside her. Another survivor grabbed Tucker's spear with both hands, pulling himself further onto the sharp point just to reach Tucker's throat. Tucker quickly let go, slamming his forearm across the man's chest and barely dodged the bite. Their eyes were completely unfocused, their mouths moving without words. Deep cuts covered their arms, but pain did absolutely nothing. Tucker knocked an attacker down with his spear, but the man rose. No step back. They just don't stop, Tucker warned. Then, stop trying to scare them, he replied. Break their formation, keep them alive. They needed answers, not corpses. A huge Blackwater fighter rushed him and clamped his teeth onto the hide cloak. His elbow bounced off the brute's temple. He tore away only the dark patch stained by his reopened wound. The clean hide hit the dirt. The beast wanted blood, not the cloak. Then, several attackers broke through Tucker's line, charging past the armed hunters directly toward one house. Inside lay Kasha, recovering from the spear wound she suffered. During their duel, fresh blood had already soaked through her bandages. Since Kasha hailed from Sunshore, she lay hidden behind a solid wall. Still, the attackers were tracking the scent. He cut across their path, striking the first attacker behind the knee. Tamsin dragged Kasha out through the rear escape while Nola wrapped a clean hide over the bleeding bandage. Every Blackwater head turned instantly. They were hunting blood. He grabbed Colby's shoulder and yelled, "Bring the 3 boar cubs right now." Colby's face paled. Those animals were their future food, the very first livestock they had raised. Yet Colby still ran. Tamsin heard the order. "You are sacrificing the pen," she warned. "He chose animals over people." He told her the attackers follow blood, so they must give them moving bait. Colby returned, carrying 1 squealing cub while 2 other hunters brought the rest. He scratched each beast just enough to draw fresh blood, then released them down the river path. The cubs ran. Every Blackwater survivor turned at once. They abandoned the village fighters to chase the blood through the thick trees. Tucker stared after them. "That worked," Tucker muttered. "Celebrate when they stop moving," he replied. They followed at a distance, paralytic spears ready. The cubs reached the shallow river and the Blackwater horde crowding over them. Driven mad by the scent, he heard the beasts squeal just once. Suddenly, the largest fighter twitched, his legs folding, one by one. The others collapsed around him before they could even throw a single poison spear. They had not even thrown one. The survivors' own bodies had failed before any weapons even touched them. He ordered Tucker to bind every survivor and lock them in the livestock cages. The boar cubs were gone. He had spent their first livestock to keep these human captives alive. Several hours later, the prisoners woke beside the animal pens. Their first clear word was water. He handed the largest man a bowl. Through the heavy wooden bars, the man drank, coughed, and grabbed a second bowl. With both hands, after some rest in water, his voice finally returned. Nola crouched beside. He asks the prisoner's name, but the man only stares blankly at his bullhead cloak. Rage fades into pure terror as the prisoner rasps, asking if they are Iron Peak. He is Garrick Biarderick, the 29-year-old surviving chief of Blackwater. The leader replies that they are the Rookie tribe, and Iron Peak is far away. He demands answers as Garrick clutches an empty bowl, trying to remember. Speaking in broken fragments, Garrick recalls a child in Blackwater catching a fat dodo. Iron Peak stole the catch, and when Garrick confronted them, more warriors invaded. They raided the settlement without warning, slaughtering adults and children alike. Garrick remembers a sharp, chemical smell spreading quickly through the huts. His eyes burned and his balance failed, watching his people strike blindly at shadows. An iron peak weapon struck his skull, and he woke up locked inside this cage. Garrick looks south, hoping his tribe is waiting, but the leader knows the grim truth. He knew the truth. Blackwater was a silent graveyard when he arrived. As the leader delivers the news, the bowl slips from Garrick's hands. He covers his face, bending forward until his forehead hits the cold cage floor. Silence falls over everyone. Garrick once led a proud clan, now reduced to this. The few survivors breathing behind him are everything, as a dry leaf slips from his hair. The frontier system immediately identifies the specimen as industrial hemp. When burned, this plant creates heavy smoke that numbs pain and distorts perception. Similar fragments cling to the others, so the leader shows Garrick the leaf. Garrick recognizes the smell, confirming what warped their senses and dulled their minds. He suspects Iron Peak used toxic smoke, though the exact recipe remains a mystery. He cannot prove who directed these brainwashed survivors toward their camp. Still, his tribe paid in blood. Garrick lifts his head, his voice turning ice cold. He demands to be let out, promising they will serve until Iron Peak is dead. The leader crouches down, warning him that revenge only happens on his own terms. If they join, some must build and others must fish, working before seeking revenge. They must obey the tribe first. Hearing this, Garrick looks back at the survivors. Making up his mind, Garrick places a single fist firmly against his chest. He swears their lives to the rookie tribe, begging only for their protection. The others follow suit. Tucker watches the very people who just tried to kill them. Tamsin watches the former enemy chief bow deeply toward their young settlement. Just like that, former attackers become allies as they finally lower their weapons. The leader opens the cage himself, welcoming the survivors into their ranks. With the cage open, the frontier system displays a mission-completed message. Their population target is exceeded, with the counter climbing past 50. With 7 days remaining, they secure a massive early completion bonus. The system awards attribute points, a material chest, medicine, and a mysterious plaque. Inside the material chest lies a full ton of rich red-black hematite ore. He pulls out a heavy piece from storage and drops it right before Nola. It hits the ground with a loud metallic thud, leaving Nola staring in disbelief. He promises her real metal weapons soon before using the fresh medicine. After treating Kasha, he hands the remaining ointment pouch to Nola. She clutches it tightly, valuing the healing salve even more than the precious ore. With many fighters still recovering, this reward secures their fragile future. Becoming a funeral, he spent 3 points on strength, heat spread through his bones, his shoulders widened, his back straightened, and his hair dropped. Farther across his face as his body adjusted, Nola looked him up and down. Without shame, the king's packaging improved, she decided. He pushed the hair from his eyes, time to focus on the ore and his 2 resources, 50+ people. Crowded around the ore while Nola held the new medicine, Garrick and the survivors stood free behind them, but none of them celebrated. Their hollow faces still carried the price of that reward. The 50-person mission was finally complete. The problem was, he had every reason to believe the clan that turned Garrick's people into rabid weapons already knew they existed, right? After the 50-person reward landed at the rookie settlement, he inspected a ton of ore fresh medicine in one carved plaque. The ore promised metal. The plaque promised civilization. Its first real achievement would be making half his workforce hide indoors until they invented clothes. He spent technology points to identify it. Modesty plaque. Repeated exposure encourages privacy, clothing, and shared social restraint. The effect spread through repeated exposure, so he placed the plaque near the central fire, considering Tamsin treated any quiet stretch of river like a private bath. This felt like defensive technology. Nola inspected the carving beside him, joking that his newest reward was a rock that teaches embarrassment. He told Nola that civilization had to start somewhere. Apparently it started with covering up. Nola adjusted the hide strap at her shoulder, demanding better clothes since he stared enough already. He was only reading the plaque, he told her. She mockingly agreed. The joke lasted until he looked around. More than 50 people needed food and protection, and Iron Peak had already shown it could destroy a clan without facing them. Nola lowered her voice, suggesting they send food and ask what Iron Peak wanted. Garrick heard his jaw tightening. They slaughtered Blackwater before asking anything, Ryland told Nola preparation came first. He sent Garrick's fishers to the river, his strongest workers to Tucker, and his spiders to patrol training. Then he handed Garrick some smoked bull meat. He chewed, frowning that this was what warriors eat. Warriors eat whatever gets them to the next fight, Ryland told him. He finished the strip. Tucker received the harder job. Ryland walked him around the narrow river forest and southern approaches. They would layer traps then put beacon towers behind them. Only Tucker and Ryland would know every location. Crews would rotate, nobody would draw a full map, and he had to memorize the network. Tucker stared, asking if Ryland truly trusted him with every tribal path. He trusted him to remember holes better than straight walls, Ryland answered. Tucker ignored the insult and looked at the ground again. His shoulders had already changed. The man who once tied Ryland to a post had become the only person holding his complete defense plan. That night, he passed out beside an unfinished trap line while Tucker checked the next shift. In his dream, he was back inside a city bar. Music played. Beautiful women crowded the table. One leaned against his shoulder and asked whether primitive kings still bought drinks. He put an arm round her waist. Then Tucker's voice broke in, demanding Ryland remove his hand. He opened his eyes. His face was against Tucker's shoulder. One arm was locked around his middle. Tucker held a shovel, looking ready to use it as a weapon. He let go fast, almost tumbling straight into the unfinished pit. You were a woman 2 seconds ago, he blurted. Tucker stepped back. You were making promises. He had survived monsters, assassination attempts, and Tamsin's whip. But flirting with Tucker in his sleep, a brand new personal low. Anyway, the night shift had started. He demonstrated a layered trap, keeping the lesson short. The first line was a deep pit hidden under leaves. The second was a trip cord. When he tripped it with a branch, a heavy bundle jerked upward. Inside a woven net, Bowen watched the cord, reset it, and repeated the catch without help. Good, he told him. You train the crews. Tucker chooses placement. Nobody walks backward near fresh leaves. One prototype, one result. Then the work moved without him. The next morning, he walked into a settlement that looked completely abandoned. No women stood near the cooking fires. The drying racks were empty. Half the house crews had vanished. Nola opened one door while wrapped in a thick hide blanket. Your plaque worked, she announced. Now everyone is suddenly aware that their clothes are completely terrible. Behind her, several women refused to step outside wearing the same short hides they had used for years. Emery leaned through another doorway. Her spear wound had improved, but she still moved cautiously. You wanted civilization, Emery called, and civilization wants pants. Fighting a bull king was easier than forcing 50 embarrassed adults outside, so he gave the clothing crews half a day. Nola organized hides. Emery directed the cutting from her seat, since lifting still pulled at her wound. By afternoon, people returned to work wearing rough wraps, longer skirts, and enough extra leather to restart the economy. That modesty plaque had improved social behavior, even if it destroyed a morning of productivity. Balanced reward. The trap crews found something useful before sunset. A worker struck pale stone beneath the soil, throwing sparks from his tool. Flint filled the edge of the pit. Tucker climbed down to inspect it. Then he pressed 2 fingers into a darker, softer layer. Before anyone could stop him, he touched it to his tongue. His face twisted. Dung. Tucker spat. He stared at his defense commander. You are the only scout he knows who gathers intelligence with his mouth. Tucker spat repeatedly while Bowen laughed hard enough to drop a rope. The buried layer was ancient. Too much waste had collected here to come from a single animal. An older camp might have used this ground, or some huge herd had treated it as a toilet. He could prove neither theory. They kept the flint, covered the dung, and moved the drinking path farther away. Then he ordered more traps and beacon towers facing north, west, and south. Iron Peak might know this land better than they did. He wanted smoke in the sky before an enemy reached their houses. 4 days later, he inspected 10 finished houses around the central fire. They were rough, crowded, and still standing. For Tucker, that counted as luxury. Emery crossed the clearing the moment she saw him, wrapping both arms round his chest and slamming him hard enough to drive his back into a finished wall. The wall cracked. Everyone stopped. Emery looked over his shoulder at the broken support. They finished 10 houses. He looked at the damage. Now they have 9. And assigned himself 1 repair. She smiled, still holding him. Worth it. In his defense, that warm hug was easily winning the argument. Outside, Garrick's people carried baskets of fresh river fish. Nola salted and dried. The Catch while Sunshore families stacked jerky beneath raised wooden roofs. People who fought days ago now argued over fish, salt, and smoke. No blood, children slept safely indoors, good enough, but then Tucker ruined the warm moment, arriving with the new tower count, 3 lines. Demanded more healthy watchers than they had, food and repairs needed hands. Expansion brought more hands, but twice as many chores to complete. So Duncan and Ryland joined the Southern construction crew to help. Duncan's old thigh wound shortened his stride, but he refused lighter work. They had barely raised the next tower frame when smoke suddenly climbed. From the southern beacon, a trap had triggered. Ryland grabbed his axe. He ran south with Duncan following. The trap caught one dangerous target. Unfortunately, it was Queen Tamsin. She hung upside down by one ankle. Her braided whip dangled just out of reach. Hide wrap stayed on. But her face was red with fury. She glared, demanding a rescue. Ryland stepped closer and tapped her bare foot. Got a check for injuries. She instantly tried to kick him. Ryland caught her heel and tickled the sole once. Tamsin's entire body jerked, furiously vowing to bury Ryland Wilder in that pit. Beautiful threat, but terrible timing. Sunshore hunters were approaching. Through the trees, Ryland moved across the trail before they saw her. He ordered the hunters to circle east and check the other cords. They obeyed and disappeared. Behind Ryland, the trapped queen whispered a warning. His funeral would be today. He quickly cut the vine, catching her waist. And setting her upright before the hunters returned, she shoved him away red-faced. Then whispered closely that if he touched her foot again, he would lose his hand. The trap worked, but it exposed a major patrol gap behind them. Once Tamsin stopped threatening him, she gestured toward the coast trail. Sunshore fishers had found fresh hyena tracks on what should be a safe beach trail. Before sending children, Ryland complained about not being told, but Tamsin folded her arms. She demanded he map them. Ryland noted only he and Tucker knew every location. That rule was absolute. Tamsin narrowed her eyes but accepted it. Then she glanced toward the southern brush, wondering if survivors were hiding. If they did, she wanted them executed before Iron Peak used that path. Ryland refused. Garrick's people held the line. The problem was the patrol gap. They had to clear hyenas, place a cliff outpost, and gather salt. Beside the sea, Tamsin watched him, noting his worry. Ryland admitted it. Explaining her embarrassing trap would damage morale, she reached for her whip. Ryland walked faster. At dawn, Garrick led his best fighters down south. A Sunshore child pointed toward the narrow path where the hyenas had chased gatherers before. A gray shape burst out before the child could finish. Garrick crossed the distance first, seizing the child by his shoulder, throwing him behind the line, and drove his spear through the hyena's chest. The rest of the pack rushed from both sides as Blackwater. They finally looked like the fighters KBY described, no longer brawling as individuals. They moved around Garrick's commands, 2 holding the center while others struck from the flanks. The beast pack lost its momentum and never recovered. One hyena slipped through and charged him. He caught it beneath the throat, turned with its momentum, slamming it hard into the dirt. The beast stopped moving. Garrick looked over the bodies, asking if that was all. He stared at him, noting his disappointed tone. Garrick answered that he was promised dangerous work. The combat addict had joined the right tribe. With the road clear, they climbed the coastal cliff before noon. He pointed out 3 key tasks: beacon and a guarded salt field. For days, he told Garrick, build the outpost and keep the route open. Garrick drove his spear into the chosen ground. Blackwater had lost its home. Now its survivors would build Rookie's second stronghold. The southern corridor was open, but the new territory worsened their manpower. Problem worse, Colby was missing. He had sent him north that morning to scout the lake and Snow Mountain. By sunset, he was overdue, 3 days. After he ordered the beach outpost, Colby returned to the Rookie settlement after dark mud covered his legs. He carried no meat. More importantly, the 19-year-old scout, who usually noticed every risk, had forgotten to make a joke. Colby had found a wide northern lake beneath a snow mountain. Something enormous moved under the water, but he never saw enough of it to name the creature. He described a long wake crossing water with no wind. The surface lifted once near the far bank, then dropped before he could see ahead. Colby circled the shore instead of approaching and came home alive. Then he described footprints leading away from the lake toward the snow. Each depression was broad enough to hold one of their new houses. Bowen's face changed. The quiet throwing specialist had survived those tracks once before. He told them that the Group Tucker led had originally held more than 30 people, a giant scattered. Them, the 15 people who captured him beside the river, were only part of the survivors. Nola grabbed his arm. You are not walking toward the thing that cut Tucker's group in half. Bowen corrected her in a flat voice. It did worse than that. That ended the debate beautifully. Suddenly, a terrifying new mission pops up. Find the giant, reward 1 attribute point, just 1 point for seeing it. When the system that made him fight a saber-tooth paid for sight alone, the warning was loud enough. He scheduled a 4-person expedition after the partner ceremony. The ceremony came first because he had already made Tamsin wait, and surviving a giant only to die by her wrath felt inefficient. 2 days later, the rookie tribe gathered around the central fire. The clothing crews had made him a fitted bullhide coat and a narrow bone crown. Tamsin entered wearing layered dark hides with her braided whip at one hip. She looked gorgeous and completely aware of it. He forgot half his prepared speech. Then Emery stepped beside the fire and placed Tamsin's hand in his. He kept the declaration plain. Tamsin Lockwood is my partner and queen of the rookie tribe. When I am gone, her command carries mine. Sunshore and Brackwater stand under the same protection. Anyone who follows me follows her. Tucker lowered his spear. First, Garrick followed, then Sunshore and the original camp moved together. The weapons finally pointed away from the royal pair. Emery tried to smile, but tears fell. The tears fell, but Nola quietly took Emery's hand. Tamsin watched them both. Tamsin looked at both women, then faced the tribe, promising she would guard what they built. She swore that no clan beast or coward would harm her people while Ryland was gone. The settlement answered with a single roar. Tamsin used her new authority immediately. She immediately ordered 1 Sunshore guard and 1 Brackwater fighter to take the Western watch together. Neither looked happy, but both obeyed and left. They departed without asking Ryland to confirm her command. Emery wiped her eyes and looked at him. She still wanted the future she had envisioned beside their very first campfire. Instead, she stepped back, refusing to challenge Tamsin's leading place before the tribe. Nola stayed by her side, watching Tamsin with a smirk that promised their rivalry was far from over. Ryland had arrived tied to a post, but now the tribe accepted his new queen. Still, wedding night complications waited inside the largest cabin, where Tamsin stood by the sleeping platform, her whip uncoiled right across the doorway. Ryland stopped out of reach. Quite a tense wedding night. Tamsin tapped a handle against her palm. He made her queen today, but now she heard he was leaving at sunrise. A worker had leaked the news about packed supplies before Ryland could even explain. Village gossip was apparently improving at the worst possible time. He explained the Northern Lake, Bowen's giant story, and their target mission. If the giant had people, tools, or enemies, this trip might reveal allies against Iron Peak. Even if not, he still had to know what lurked beyond their borders. Tamsin stepped closer, demanding if he planned to investigate with Bowen and Garrick. While she heard it from a worker, he had planned to tell her tonight, he said. Tamsin lightly tapped the whip against his side. During their ceremony night, he admitted the schedule lacked romance. Her whip suddenly circled his waist and pulled him closer. Kasha goes with him, Tamsin decided, wanting her eyes on his back. Ryland stared at the whip, then at her. Did he really want his former assassin walking behind him? Bold move. Tamsin smiled. She knew the position already. It was disturbing but fair. In return, Tamsin agreed to train a stone sling defense unit while he was gone. Small stones were plentiful, and trained slingers could defend walls without wasting their finest spears. She tightened the whip, telling him she would use her new authority. He jokingly reminded her that queens still had to eventually untie their partners, but Tamsin pulled him closer instead before finally lowering the whip. To set the real rules, he could leave because she would rule the settlement. In return, he had to state his destination and stop disappearing, only to return injured. He promised to give her those updates. The injuries were harder to avoid. Tamsin stared at him until he added he would try. Tamsin then loosened the whip, finally giving him permission to leave, though her glare suggested he still owed her. At dawn, 4 adults left. Bowen carried throwing spears and Ryland's bow, while Garrick held a heavy spear. Kasha carried 2 stone knives, along with enough hostility for their entire journey. Kasha, Tamsin's fiercest guard and Ryland's former assassin, walked right behind him. Every time a branch brushed his shoulder, he nervously checked for a hidden blade. Kasha noticed. Nervous, the MC reminds Garrick of his attempt to murder someone before breakfast. He respects consistency. Garrick laughs, but Kasha remains silent near the northern lake. Garrick points toward the dark water. He once saw something down there. A beast struck from beneath, and he barely escaped the resulting wave. Bowen asks in disbelief if he survived. Garrick shrugs, it was just luck. Garrick treats surviving a lake monster like some minor travel detail. Brackwater standards are definitely wild. They keep pushing toward the snowy mountain. They trek through an unfamiliar forest where bright fruit hangs near the path. The system flags the fruit as toxic right before Garrick can eat it. The MC slaps his hand away. Garrick frowns, claiming he was not eating it. He retorts that Garrick was practically putting it in his mouth as Kasha passes. She calls his warriors impressive, but he notes that Garrick is from Brackwater. Survival instincts are optional there. Soon, the system detects valuable resources. It finds medicinal leaves growing all along the lower mountain slopes. They also spot usable wild grain and strong fibers suitable for weaving. Later, the MC strips a flexible branch and twists the fibers together. He crafts a sturdy bowstring, easily shooting down a hanging seed pod. Kasha closely watches his skilled hands, but quickly looks away when caught. Just then, the system issues a new farming mission to gather grains. They must plant several types of grain within 180 days. Such a generous deadline instantly makes the suspicious MC highly alert. They collect seeds and fiber until wild hyenas suddenly ambush them. The beast snaps at Bowen, but Garrick drives it off while Kasha slashes another. The pack flees north. They give chase to prevent future threats. The trail leads directly toward giant footprints and active local predators. Honestly, it takes a minute to realize how foolish that decision was. The fleeing beasts lead them straight into a field of massive red flowers. Hostile vines suddenly explode from the soil, instantly wrapping around Bowen. Another vine binds Garrick's chest, while more emerge to target Kasha. They drag her helplessly toward a massive bloom as she frantically hacks back. Her stone knife quickly begins dissolving inside the plant's highly corrosive sap. The system identifies the lethal threat as a cluster of blood-trap flowers. Their acid destroys weapons and prey alike. Kasha discards her ruined blade. Before she can grab another, the massive bloom opens directly beneath her. The petals fold tightly, swallowing her whole as Bowen screams her name. Garrick desperately stabs the vine, but his trusty spearhead immediately melts in the toxic sap. Kasha fights from inside, but her blows grow weaker. Spotting dry wood on the floor, the MC acts quickly. He pulls out some old flint, instantly striking bright sparks into dry bark. He feeds the flames, pushing the burning bundle under the vines. The wildfire sweeps through the dry brush, dropping Bowen first. The MC chops Garrick free, while Bowen is dragged safely away from the flames. He rushes over to Kasha's flower, but his strikes only make it tighten. So he jams burning wood into the seam and forces his heavy blade inside. The weakened flower finally pops open, spilling a barely conscious Kasha onto the ground. She lay barely conscious, her breathing shallow as red sap coated one side of her face. He cleared her mouth, checked her breathing, and dragged her away from danger. Those snapping petals, another vine grabbed his ankle, but Bowen swiftly sliced it apart with his remaining spear, while Garrick kicked burning embers. Across the trail behind them, they saved Kasha, but a massive fire was already spreading through the trap field, damaging her tough leather armor. He pulled off his royal coat, wrapped it around her, and scooped her up. Before the surrounding flowers ignited, she was under his protection on this journey. They dashed downhill toward the lake, while flaming vines popped and cracked behind them. Bowen could barely move his wounded arm. Garrick supported him while he carried Kasha. Close, when she woke, she instantly struggled to push away, demanding he put her down, commanding him to save Bowen instead, but he demanded she walk first. Until then, she was staying with him. Suddenly, a surviving hyena burst from the smoke. His bow lay across her lap under the coat. She grabbed it, mimicking his stance. She had carefully observed earlier, drawing the string back with trembling hands. Her first arrow flew straight through the hyena's open mouth, dropping the beast instantly. Kasha lowered the weapon. Bowen stared at the incredible shot, then looked at her. He noted she had only watched one lesson, but she coldly replied it was enough. Her aim was excellent, but her hostile attitude remained completely unchanged. Once the fire died down, her strength collapsed, forcing him to carry her. He carried her on his back, while the others scavenged for their dropped medicine. She stayed quiet for a long time, while the others walked ahead. But then, talk about betrayal. She presses a cold knife right against his throat. She slipped it from his belt, knowing the beasts were wounded before reaching safety. Their trail was too clean, and his fighters conveniently appeared from the same direction. The panicked herd had obeyed him instantly. As she pressed the blade closer, she admitted she couldn't prove he caused the disaster, so she tried to kill him before Tamsin could hand over her clan. He simply kept walking. She had pieced the truth together. He saved her, yet he caused her tragedy. He calmly pointed out that she had chosen Tamsin over actual proof. When she demanded to know if he denied it, he remained completely silent. Instead, he adjusted her weight on his back and kept moving forward. He told her to wait until he stopped carrying her before cutting his throat. She pulled the blade back 1 inch, warning she wouldn't hesitate if he betrayed them. She slipped the knife back into his belt, and he silently kept carrying her. Near sunset, they stumbled upon the hyena den while gathering the remaining herbs. A few tiny cubs huddled under the tree roots, crying out for help. Their whimpering brought the surviving adults back, watching warily from a safe distance. And here is the crazy twist: those beasts were only protecting their den. The deadly flower field acted as a shield for their hidden home. They had charged straight through it, destroying their only defense. Kasha stared down. Since they burned their home, he refused to leave the cubs behind. Triggering a system-taming mission, he decided to rescue the helpless young. The scorched earth offered no safety now. Garrick carried 2 of them. Bowen managed one with his good arm, while Kasha held another warm under his coat. And called it cargo twice. The predator problem had now become a future hunting dog. Problem, then a roar echoed through the trees ahead. Branches broke and a massive bear stepped onto the trail, blocking the injured group from the only safe path home. Bowen tightened his grip on the spear in his good hand, whispering Maynator. He warned the man-eating bear blocked the only clear trail home. Kasha could barely stand. Bowen had only 1 useful arm, and Garrick carried 2 hyena cubs. With enough anger to challenge anything with teeth, so he made the decision nobody else could afford. He ordered Garrick to take them south and not stop until the fire was behind them. Kasha pushed away from his shoulder, protesting he could not fight that beast alone. He agreed, telling her that is exactly why he would annoy it and run. He handed the remaining cub to Garrick, struck the bear across the nose with the flat of his axe and sprinted north. The bear roared and followed him. Good. The injured group now had a path, but he had just become dinner with legs. He ran toward the snowy mountain because the trees grew thinner there. The bear tore through brush behind him, gaining ground every time the path rose. Then another roar came. From his left, he knew that sound, the same sabertooth from his first day. Burst through the trees and attacked. Honestly, he had spent weeks becoming stronger, but apparently this tutorial boss had spent those weeks holding a serious grudge. He veered downhill, fully expecting the predators to fight over him. They did not. The bear kept chasing, and the sabertooth followed close behind. 2 apex predators had formed the most unwelcome alliance in history. Suddenly, his frontier system offered an emergency escape option, granting intense agility for 600 seconds. Its effect converted strength into stamina, but there was a heavy cost. Approximately 1/3 of his core stats would be permanently lost after use. 10 minutes of speed with a permanent penalty afterward, using Rift Cleaver at full output could leave him unconscious for days, but refusing this emergency mode would leave him dead in minutes. He accepted. The forest slowed down. His next step covered twice the distance. The bear's massive paws struck empty dirt behind him. The sabertooth lunged, but he pivoted instantly before the claws reached his coat. Sprinting between 2 closed boulders, he waited until both predators committed. Then cut sideways. The bear crashed into the sabertooth shoulder first. The collision sent the big cat rolling. Behind it, the bear crashed through a dead tree. Their accidental collision bought him precious seconds, so he kept moving. His emergency escape countdown kept ticking down as he ran toward the snow. He crossed ground that should have taken an hour, watching the predators shrink far behind him. By the time the timer dropped below half, he had reached the lower snowfield. That was where he found the giant. It stood beyond a ridge taller than the trees below it. 1 arm looked thick enough to lift a mountain. The giant moved through snow that reached his knees as if it were dust. The frontier system rewarded him 1 attribute point the moment he saw it. Then another quest appeared to attack the giant, promising 10 attribute points. The system only required a single hit. Damage was never part of the rule. Rules are rules, and let's face it, greed is also greed. He picked up the smallest pebble he could find and threw it. The stone struck the giant's Calf the giant looked down. For one terrible second, he thought he had become interesting, but the giant just brushed the spot and kept walking. The frontier system. Awarded 10 points. He had traded permanent stats to survive, but recovered more. Then he lost by disrespecting a mountain-sized giant with some gravel. It was beautiful, reckless too. Instantly, the system offered a third stage, defeat the giant alone for 100 points. Before he could reject it, the giant spotted him near the ridge. One brutal slap, snow and stone erupted across the entire slope. The impact buried him to the chest, knocking the air right out of him. The giant merely swatted nearby. He rejected the mission. 100 points sounded incredible, but dying before spending them sounded far worse. One final burst of emergency escape got him off the snowfield. When the timer ended, the borrowed speed vanished. The cost hit hard. His legs folded, every muscle emptied, the interface blurring before he could read the final loss. Several days later, he limped back to the settlement. Garrick's group had already returned with Kasha, Bowen, and the hyena cubs. Search teams had been searching for him since night 1. The crowd rushed the gate, and Tamsin reached him first. Smiling for the tribe, she wrapped her arms around him, making his collapse look like an embrace. The king is tired, she announced, ordering everyone back. Nobody saw his knees fail inside the house. Once the covering closed, Tanan shoved him down, pressing a hand against his chest. Stay down, she ordered. When he tried to sit, she pushed him flat. You always find a new way to return half-dead, she remarked. In his defense, those giant missions paid incredibly well. Tamsin's defense was stronger. He looked like the entire forest rejected him. She checked every wound, made Nola bring water, and hid how badly his hands shook. The queen he appointed during his absence was already protecting his authority from his own failing body. Once he can focus, he checked the system numbers. Emergency escape cost 4 points, but those giant missions paid 11. He restored his weak areas and pushed agility past its next major threshold. Heat moved through his bones, his legs lengthened, his shoulders widened, and his hide shirt tore right down the back. Tamsin stared at the ruined clothing. He looked back, pointing to the door. She ordered him to stay inside. Dressed like that, the clothing crew made him replacement pants before sunset. The next morning, he ignored her orders and walked to the training field. Tamsin had already formed a sling unit. Sunshore women spun heavy stone slings overhead, while Tucker's workers raised bark targets far beyond the houses. Tamsin snapped one forward, and the stone punched clean through the center target. Every trainee copied her stance. She took a wedding night bargain and turned it into a ranged defense while he was gone. Competent women were pretty dangerous to his ego. Then Tamsin noticed his new pants, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. Did the clothing crew do it? She asked, pinching his new waistband. Several people did, he answered, explaining his body grew after the giant reward. The old pair stopped fitting. Tamsin circled him, looking for any signs of deception. He disappeared for days, only to return taller in another woman's pants. She said he asked if she understood the problem, but she simply retorted that those pants survived longer than his explanation. Her mouth began to twitch. Tamsin reported that Kasha was finally walking, and Bowen could use his arm again. Though neither of them was ready to fight, Garrick had already asked 3 times when they would attack Iron Peak. Naturally, Garrick treated recovery like a waste of time. The tribe still needed numbers, so that afternoon he carved numbers from 1 to 9 on a board, matching symbols to stones for people, food, weapons, and days. The group copied him, and his technology total hit 100. With the shop unlocked, he ignored the menu and bought the very first iron object in their world. A heavy iron cauldron dropped near the fire, making the whole settlement go silent. The pot was huge, perfect for cooking. Turned sideways, it could block arrows or even serve as armor. Tucker could probably wear it. The leader walked around it, slapping the sides. He did a quick dance of joy, celebrating this newly purchased iron treasure, but of course everyone was watching. Tucker lowered his voice, whispering that the king was speaking to the iron spirit. He froze, playing along. He told them the spirit demanded water and fish, saving his dignity by giving everyone a job. They boiled water, adding fresh fish, salt, and wild herbs. Soon, the very first hot meal, big enough for the whole village, was ready. Children held out their wooden bowls, while the survivors from Garrick's tribe stared quietly at the steam. Sunshore workers then arrived, carrying baskets of fresh sea salt from their southern outpost. The system quickly rewarded their clean water and preserved salt production giving him enough technology points to nearly refund. The cauldron, Tamsin tasted the soup, joking that the iron spirit cooked well. He leaned closer, whispering that its king deserved a reward, before catching her waist to kiss her. Right in front of both tribes, Tamsin kissed him back while Emery stared into her bowl. Nola smiled, looking like she had found gossip to last for a month. The title. Alliance was working great, though his domestic safety was still totally unpredictable. Unstable but duty calls, a trap alarm suddenly cuts the party short, and they find a wild female hyena caught in the ropes, miraculously avoiding the sharp stakes and thrashing wildly. The system immediately identified the beast as a nursing mother. Their captured cubs had refused meat, crying all through the night, so this mother was their best shot at keeping them alive. He bound the mother's muzzle, tied her legs, and sent her to Colby with orders to keep the cubs close. If they recognized her, they should loosen the ropes one by one. Colby nodded, carrying the smallest, whining cub straight toward the enclosure. The captured mother paused her struggling, tracking the sound of her baby, which gave their taming mission a real shot. The next morning, he headed north with Garrick, Kasha, and Bowen to gather medicine. They filled their sacks with ripe grain. But the metallic scent of blood on the wind stopped them cold. A wounded bear staggered painfully through the dense trees, with deep cuts covering her massive body as poison spread down her legs. A chunk of poisoned meat trailed in her wake, and a chasing hunter carried even more of it. Fierce Iron Peak hunters followed closely behind. Mocking the beast, a young warrior jabbed her with his spear, laughing when she collapsed. Suddenly, the older chief smashed the young man's spear so hard it shattered against the stone. The chief warned that true hunters kill cleanly and never torture prey. They did not defeat. This proud veteran was Heath Ashen, the 38-year-old leader of the Iron Peak hunters. Arrived with black obsidian blades, moving in disciplined lines. Heath stepped forward, preparing to finish off the bear himself. Garrick recognized Iron Peak and grabbed his spear, but the young leader grabbed him. He dragged Garrick back behind the brush to keep them hidden. Garrick hissed that they killed Brackwater, but they were heavily outnumbered. Charging now meant the last of Brackwater would die right here, he warned. Garrick stopped. Unfortunately, the frontier system removed their option to stay hidden. This rescue mission required stopping the bear's bleeding and toxin within 10 minutes. Failure meant having his strength and stamina disabled for 7 days. A king carried like dead weight. That would be a public embarrassment. The bear sagged again. He accepted and stepped between Heath and the beast. Heath's obsidian blade stopped inches from his axe. Heath ordered him to move. "Give me 10 minutes, the leader answered, "then decide if you want the beast." Heath looked at the medicine pouch, then at Garrick emerging behind him, spear raised. The Iron Peak warriors advanced, but Kasha and Bowen blocked their path. They blocked the first pair while Garrick met another head-on, despite their injuries. Though hurt from the flower field, they held the line as he healed the bear. He pressed fresh ointment into the deepest cut and bound it tight. Bleeding slowed, but the poison kept spreading as her breathing grew weaker. As the timer fell, Garrick knocked one warrior back and took a hit. The cut slashed his shoulder. Bowen lost his spear, but Kasha dragged him clear. She kept fighting with a stone knife while Heath watched their formation. Instead of joining the easy kill, Heath told him to take his wounded and leave. Heath promised not to chase them. Garrick spat blood, shouting that Brackwater received no mercy. He charged again. Heath swung once, sending a visible wave of force tearing forward. The force threw Garrick back. The leader left the bear for a single heartbeat. He raised World Cleaver, catching the remaining force on his heavy black blade. The impact drove his feet through the soil, but he stopped the force. Heath lowered his weapon, asking him what tribe they belonged to. "Rookie," the leader answered. Heath's eyes moved from the axe to his defenders. Heath told the Rookie King to grow stronger and bring equal numbers next time. They would settle their border with equal numbers. With that, Heath ordered Iron Peak to withdraw. Garrick tried to pursue, but the leader caught his arm. They had a poisoned bear, 3 wounded allies, and absolutely no antidote. Revenge would wait. Heath's fighters retreated, carrying their injured warriors away. Several stared back at World Cleaver, but Heath never offered another strike. The rescue timer entered its final minute. Though bleeding stopped, poison held the bear. He crushed honeysuckle with a bitter detox root, guided by the frontier system. The system only marked it as potentially useful, so he took a gamble. Garrick held the bear's jaw while he forced the medicine into her mouth. As the countdown reached its final seconds, the poisoned beast finally swallowed. Her breathing deepened, the rescue mission was complete, and the bear stabilized. The system awarded points, but the heavy bear was still unable to travel. Garrick looked toward the trail, proposing they catch the enemy before dark. The young king refused, choosing instead to protect his people first. Garrick, Kasha, and Bowen went home with the millet, medicine, and news of the equal. Number challenge, he stayed by the bear all night as the smell of blood drew. Scavengers after sunset, he killed the first one with his axe, roasting part of the meat, leaving the rest raw beside the bear. She slowly woke, watching him eat. He slid the raw meat closer, telling her she almost started a war. At least have some dinner. She ate without taking her eyes off him. The timer was gone, but he stayed anyway, keeping the fire between them in the dark. At sunrise, the bear pushed a piece of meat toward him. The frontier system credited the voluntary bond with a small taming reward. When he stood up to leave, she followed. He walked faster, but she caught the back of his coat with her teeth and, pulling him toward the rookie trail, asking if she wanted to come. The bear tugged again. He named her Bramble. When they reached the settlement, the gate guards raised every spear. He stepped beside Bramble, gently lowering his axe. She is with him, he told them. Bramble stood taller than the guards and accepted the announcement like she had founded the tribe herself. The rookie tribe had gained a powerful bear ally, Heath's future challenge, and another reason for every neighboring clan to stare. Bramble choosing him felt like a miracle. On their next trip north, the lake began moving, and even she refused to take another step. The morning after Bramble joined the rookie tribe, he took her north along Heath's old trail. He had promised an equal match, and he needed an answer. Before Iron Peak returned with fighters trained to break theirs, a bamboo grove blocked the lower path. He cut one hollow stalk. Firecrackers needed bamboo, charcoal, crude nitrate, and sulfur. Their fires in the buried dung pit Tucker found covered 2 ingredients. Bamboo gave him the tube, but sulfur was missing. Loud blast could break a charge or buy his fighters one clean opening. One opening had killed the Bull King. The frontier system credited the idea. His rough map showed volcanic ground beyond the northern lake, so he searched there. So Bramble carried him toward the water Colby had found. She stopped before the tree line ended. The huge bear lowered her body, growled once, and backed away from the shore. Bramble had walked through Iron Peak hunters beside him, but whatever lived under that lake had completely shattered her confidence. Then, the water began moving. Bubbles rolled across the surface. A dark shape rose beneath them, long enough to turn the center of the lake black. The head broke through first. Tyrannosaurus climbed from the water. Its shoulders rose above the reeds. Mud poured from its jaws. Around its neck sat a thick collar and a snapped tether, dragged behind it through the lake. Seriously, he had thrown a pebble at a giant. Days earlier, he had already used up his lifetime supply of terrible ideas. He slid from Bramble's back and pulled her deeper into the trees. The Tyrannosaurus turned toward a noise on the opposite shore. Its tail swept through the reeds and flattened a path wider than one of their houses. Bramble pressed against his side hard enough to move him. The bear who had challenged Iron Peak hunters wanted absolutely no part of this animal. That reaction told him more than any system rating could. He kept his axe, World Cleaver, lowered. Drawing it would only make him the loudest snack nearby. They retreated one step at a time until trees blocked its view. Then a massive roar rolled over the lake. It was deep enough to shaking water from the leaves. Bramble broke into a run. He sprinted right alongside her, forgetting his dignity completely. Giant footprints and the monster beneath the lake belonged to a higher tier. That roar, it terrified his first saber-tooth. Probably did too. He could not prove which beast made that first roar, but a snapped tether pointed to one ugly possibility. A giant might have kept this Tyrannosaurus as a pet. Absolutely terrifying. Bramble ran until the lake vanished. Behind the trees, they circled the lake through the forest and reached its northern bank. Beyond the freezing water, snow blanketed the lower volcanic slope. Bramble scraped through it with both front paws while he followed a sharp smell of burned matches. Beneath the snow, yellow stone ran through a cracked patch of earth. The frontier system identified sulfur. He packed the ugly yellow stone into dry hides, while Bramble kept looking back toward the lake. That gave him every ingredient. The first firecracker could wait until he had a workbench and all 10 fingers, so they headed home. By late afternoon, Bramble carried him back through the rookie gate. The tribe stared at the sulfur for one confused moment. Then everyone stared at the bear. 2 children touched her side. A hunter asked if she could carry 3 people. Tucker arrived with folded hide and looked at Bramble's back like he was measuring a new troop. Platform Bramble showed him every tooth she owned. Tucker stepped away. She understands military planning, he told him. She just thinks that you are. Knowing she's an ally, not public furniture. Nola looked at him, sitting on. Bramble, royal furniture only, she jokes. Royal emergency transport, he corrected. Bramble turned her head and nearly dumped him into the dirt. The tribe laughed. His living status symbol had opinions. He ordered the bamboo cut and dried before Tucker could ask how loud the weapon would be. A soaked coast worker ran through the gate. He had left the southern outpost before sunrise. Marine reptile nearly 25 feet long had smashed the salt racks, tearing fishing lines apart and drove every worker away from the water. Each hour it stayed meant less salt, less fish, and one useless outpost. Their new economy had attracted its first customer. Naturally, this monster wanted to eat them. He rode Bramble south while the coast worker led them down the cleared route. Tucker followed with hunters and rope for the outpost evacuation. At the outpost, Garrick stood on the cliff with a heavy spear. Backwater fishers crowded behind him while something massive rolled through the shallows below. The creature had a long snout, powerful flippers, and a body built for speed underwater. The frontier system labeled it an ichthyosaur. One broken salt rack floated beside it, another disappeared beneath its jaws. The fishers had tried driving it away with spears. Their snapped shafts covered the wet sand, and one man held a bleeding arm behind the cliff wall. The outpost had taken 4 days to build. Salt from those racks had fed every family at the cauldron. The monster was eating their food route and teaching the workers to fear the water again. Before they set the bait, a human-sized wake slid behind the ruined rack. A black flash winked beneath the shallows and vanished under the creature's churn. He mistook it for broken obsidian and kept his eyes on the reptile. Garrick pointed toward the beach. It follows wounded fish, then turns back before touching dry ground. That gave him a plan. They dragged fresh bait across the shallows and left a blood trail toward the sand. Bramble waited behind a rock shelf while he stood knee-deep with World Cleaver ready. The ichthyosaur followed the scent. Garrick kept the fishers behind the cliff. Bramble paced beside the rock shelf, waiting for his signal. He needed the reptile to commit past the point where its flippers could turn it quickly. Its back cut through the water. It rushed the beach, opened its jaws, and lunged for the bait. He stepped aside and drove World Cleaver across its softer belly. The blade opened a long wound. The beast should have kept moving onto the sand. Instead, it twisted faster than anything that size had any right to move. Its jaws closed around his body before he could clear the water. One tooth crushed his ribs through his coat, and another tore his forearm. He jammed the axe handle across its mouth, but the ichthyosaur dragged him backward in cold water. Swallowed the beach. The surface vanished above him. His feet found nothing. The creature shook its head, forcing him deeper as he fought to keep the handle between its teeth. On land, he could wrestle monsters. Underwater, strength only helped him spend air faster. Bramble plunged after them and caught the ichthyosaurus tail in her jaws. She pulled toward shore. The beast kicked hard enough to drag the bare chest deep and kept diving. His lungs started burning. The World Cleaver slipped 1 inch, then a woman shot through the dark water beneath them. She carried 2 black obsidian daggers. One blade entered behind the ichthyosaur's jaw. The second struck the soft joint under its flipper. The animal released him and snapped toward her. He kicked toward the surface, but his arms had gone numb. The woman planted 1 foot against the creature's snout and redirected its bite away from his legs. She rolled beneath its mouth, crossed both daggers, and drove them into the same wound he had opened. The ichthyosaur convulsed, then stopped fighting. She grabbed his coat and dragged him upward. He woke on wet sand, coughing up enough water to reconsider his relationship with coastlines. The coast workers had dragged the dead reptile onto the shallows with ropes. Nobody cheered until his eyes opened. Then the nearest fisher sat down so hard he dropped his spear. The creature was dead. The salt root was usable again, and their king had nearly become part of the catch. Bramble stood over him, soaked and furious. Garrick knelt nearby. The unknown woman sat several feet away with both obsidian daggers across her knees. She was beautiful, breathing hard, and had just killed something his axe could not finish. To him, her sheer competence was extremely attractive. The woman waited until he could sit, then introduced herself. Marina Vale, explaining that she was from the Deepwater clan, looking for Garrick. Marina was 25, built for the water, and clearly unimpressed by kings, who nearly drowned right in front of her. Wiping his face, he noted that he usually introduced himself before a woman saved his life. Marina glanced at the lake behind him. She dryly noted he was too busy drinking it. Fair enough. Garrick recognized the clan name. His expression hardened. Deepwater vanished after Iron Peak moved. South Marina's grip tightened around her daggers. The jokes ended there. She told them Iron Peak had invaded Deepwater, chaining its survivors near the Iron Peak locked them in their settlement, forcing them to work. The prisoners hauled heavy stone, carried endless water, and slept with bound wrists. Anyone who slowed down was dragged away from the rest. Marina kept her voice steady until she mentioned her brother. Her older brother, Holden Vale, had created her only chance at escape. He attacked a guard, drawing all the attention. Marina stole the guards' obsidian daggers, cut her bounds, and escaped through the river while Holden stayed behind. About 10 of their people were still there. Marina finished. Holden was one of them. If they had kept him alive, Garrick drove his spear into the sand. Iron Peak had slaughtered his clan, and now held another. Chains. Marina had escaped alone, crossed dangerous waters, and killed the beast, saving their coast before asking for anything. He owed her his life. The rookie tribe owed Deepwater an answer. He told Marina she had found Garrick, and she had found him too, promising they would save her people. Smoke rose beyond the western ridge. Every coast worker turned toward it. The western beacon burned above the trees. The Western Watch had orders to light it only when armed people crossed their boundary. Heath had promised a battle, and now he had come to collect. He pointed at the dead beast. Tucker would take the coast. Workers, civilians, and that carcass home. Nothing useful stays behind. Then he faced Garrick, ordering him to hold the western route until he arrived. No revenge charge. Garrick looked ready to argue. Marina stood and handed him one obsidian dagger to save for those who deserved it. Garrick closed his hand around the dagger and stopped arguing. By late afternoon, he reached the rookie settlement. Tamsin waited at the gate with her whip, sling, and the expression she used when planning to overrule him. She demanded to go west, but he refused. She was commanding here, he answered. The coast was damaged. The wounded needed protection. If he fell, every fighter would follow her. Tam stepped close, complaining that he kept assigning her the sensible job because he knew she hated it. He assigned it because nobody else could carry his command. A Sunsure slinger and a Brackwater spear fighter both looked toward Tamsin. Nobody waited for a repeat order. None. She caught the front of his coat and pulled him close enough that the watching guard suddenly found the gate fascinating. She ordered him to come back breathing. He joked that it was always the plan, though she warned his plans had a poor record. Her anger remained, but her hand lowered from her whip. At the western trailhead, Kobe had already gone ahead to mark the safest route. Bowen joined them with his recovering arm wrapped tight. Duncan's old thigh wound shortened his stride. Nola brought her bow. Emery arrived with a spear before Tamsin could order her back inside. Tamsin looked at Emery's healed side, reminding her she had already taken a spear. Emery planted the new spear beside her, saying she knew exactly where not to stand. She had survived a bull king and learned absolutely none of the safe lessons. He left the reserve, the slingers, and the settlement guard under Tamsin's command. Then he took his 5 specialists west. At dusk they reached the western ridge. Torches moved between the trees below them. The line stopped just outside their hidden traps. Heath Ashen had brought the exact number he promised. At dusk on the western ridge, their fighters waited above the trap field while Iron Peak torches moved through the trees. Heath stopped his. They stood just before the first hidden pit. No birds sang, no insects moved. Even the small animals had fled from the 2 groups of armed men. Both sides tried to breathe quietly. Heath studied the slope, raising his obsidian blade. Rookie King, he called out, your forest is dead silent. Bring your people out. So much for the ambush. The Rookie King stepped from cover, World Cleaver across his shoulder. Behind him, his fighters emerged across 3 lanes inside KBY's markers. Heath counted their visible fighters, ordering the exact same number of Iron Peak warriors forward. Leaving the rest of his warriors behind the torch line, this man had walked right into enemy territory, found the traps, and still demanded an equal fight. As if the ridge belonged to him, annoying but pretty impressive, Heath pointed his blade right at him, one leader against another, letting the rest find their equals. Behind them, nearby, Colby crouched beside the hidden marker stones Tucker had placed. Heath had stopped before the killing pits, but those safe lanes still mattered. One wrong retreat could drop a warrior onto a stake. The Rookie King gave Colby 2 fingers, he shifted the nearest marker, opening a clean path to the river. His job was keeping everyone alive around their traps. The Rookie King answered, "You crossed his border and you don't set all the rules." Heath smiled. "Then stop me," Heath challenged. Garrick chose that moment to let his patience snap. He charged from the riverside before either chief could even make a move. Lean Iron Peak Warrior intercepted him, catching Garrick's spear on an obsidian blade. His name was Axel Pace, Heath's fastest enforcer, and his first step was lethal. His movement was so fast, it left Garrick striking empty air. Their second clash sent dirt flying from the slope. Axel moved with Heath's raw force. Packed into a much leaner body, he slid right past Garrick's spearhead, striking the shaft near his opponent's hands, forcing the heavier warrior to reset. Garrick quickly answered by slamming his spear's butt into Axel's ribs. Axel gave ground, smiling as Garrick followed him. Recognizing the bait, Garrick immediately shifted his angle. Each step dragged Axel closer to the mud and water, where speed mattered much less. Axel cut round his defense, reopening Garrick's old shoulder wound with 2 quick strikes. Before the spear could turn, Marina suddenly lunged from the river, dual obsidian daggers in hand, targeting Axel's exposed flank, but another Iron Peak warrior erupted from the water, stopping her instantly. Within seconds, the border fight split. In 4 different directions, the Rookie King tried to help Garrick, but Heath blocked his path. His obsidian blade slammed into World Cleaver, numbing the chief's hands. "Look at me," Heath commanded. "You asked your people to follow you here, so give them a leader worth following." Deflecting the strike, the Rookie King retorted, "Mine already follow me. Yours need a speech." Heath lunged again, feinting toward his opponent's injured side before reversing to strike the axe handle. World Cleaver nearly flew from his grip. The Rookie King kicked Heath's knee, stopping the disarm and making him stumble. But Heath recovered, slamming his pommel into the chief's jaw. Blood pooled. Heath reset his stance, his breathing turning ragged. The Rookie King raised World Cleaver again, ready. The duel blurred. He only caught shattered pieces of the fight after he woke up later. Bowen, Nola, Garrick, and Marina filled in the blanks about their respective lanes. They recalled the brutal blows, the orders, and those who fell south of their duel. Nola waited beside a massive log trap. An Iron Peak brute walked directly beneath it. Carrying a stone club, she sliced the rope and sent the log plunging. The brute looked up, planted both hands against the heavy timber, and shoved it away. That impact would have flattened any ordinary warrior. He ripped the log free from its ropes and hoisted it up. Meet Bodhi Hartzell, massive, thrilled, and treating their lethal trap like a toy. Bod pointed the log toward the leader, demanding a fight with the king. Nola raised her bow, warning that he had to survive the women first. Bod looked at Emery then. At Nola, his grin widened. Better, he happily embraced the upgraded challenge. Heath never looked away from his duel, shouting for Bod to find another opponent. Bod sighed in disappointment, then Emery stepped right into his path. She grabbed the log. Her old injury only allowed for one more serious battle. Trading brutal blows with this human boulder would tear her wound wide open. But Emery never respected sensible matchups. She pulled. Bod laughed and pulled back. The log barely moved between them. Suddenly, Nola fired an arrow into his upper arm. He glanced at it, merely annoyed. A second arrow struck his thick thigh. A third hit his hand and loosened his heavy grip. Emery twisted the wood, dragging it across him. Bod followed, laughing like a maniac. Treating her like a playmate, he swung the far end toward her head. Emery ducked, but the heavy wind pressure nearly swept her feet. Nola's next arrow hit his dominant hand, completely ruining his follow-through. Emery leaped onto the timber, ran 2 paces, and kicked Bod hard under his chin. The hit barely rattled him, only making him laugh as he demanded another strike. Honestly, Nola almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. The rope from the ruined trap still lay near his feet. Nola shot an arrow through one loop, pinning it to the ground. Emery circled Bod with the free end while he kept turning to track the log. One loop tightened around his ankles then. Another. Bod only noticed when his legs locked together. His smile vanished. Emery yanked the log sideways as Nola pulled the rope from behind. The giant toppled across the clearing, hitting the slope hard enough to shake the leaves loose. The failed trap was now his leash. Emery ripped the log from his hands, shoving it downhill before he could rise. That log did not stop at the bottom near the river. Meanwhile, Garrick locked his arms around Axel's waist. Axel drove his heavy pommel into Garrick's back again, and again Garrick refused to let go, dragging them closer to The water where Axel's speed was useless. Marina's struggle broke through the shallows right beside them. Her opponent caught her wrist, throwing her against a rock. She vanished beneath the cold current. Garrick glanced toward the splash. Axel seized the opening, smashing him down to one knee. Your clan died because they were weak, Axel spat. Wrong sentence, wrong man, Garrick surged up, lifted Axel completely off the ground, and threw him across the bank. Axel hit hard and lay motionless. Garrick took a slow step toward the river. But Axel rose behind him. Suddenly, Bod's stolen log came flying down the slope and struck Axel hard across the back. He collapsed again. Garrick dropped right beside him. Both fighters had spent absolutely everything. Revenge had finally put the fastest spider down, but Garrick could no longer stand to enjoy his victory. On the two Iron Peak brothers charge him, but Bowen and Duncan rush to block them. They block them before they can reach the duel, the twins moving in perfect sync. One attacks high as the other cuts low, with Bowen's injured arm slowing his throw. Duncan's bad thigh limits his movement, and one brother strikes. He hits Bowen's wrapped arm, knocking his spear aside to drive a blade into his shoulder. Meanwhile, the other cuts Duncan's face, flooding one eye with blood. The first twin points at Bowen's arm, mocking that their thrower arrived broken. Unfazed, Bowen snaps the broken spear in half for a shorter grip. He still advances, while Duncan swings blind and misses. The twins swap sides. They ruthlessly exploit his blinded eye and injured thigh, but Bowen steps in. He intercepts another cut meant for Duncan, backing up toward him while watching closely. He counts their steps aloud, yelling 3 left as the twins laugh mockingly. They split to surround them, but Bowen counts 2 as Duncan raises his axe. Duncan readies the axe. 1, Bowen calls, lunging forward to tackle the nearest twin. Bowen grabs the twin by the chest, locking his arms and holding him directly right under Duncan's falling axe. Seeing this, the second twin shoves his brother away. Duncan's blade slams down on the other twin, who chose to take the fatal blow. The surviving brother tumbles into the dirt, turning back only to see his twin won't rise. Bowen collapses right next to him, the blade still sticking out of his shoulder. Duncan drops to one knee, his face half covered in thick, dark blood. The remaining twin lets out a broken cry, completely forgetting the battle around them. It is a gut-wrenching moment. Their enemy saved his brother the same way they always do. Back at the center, Heath and he had both stopped pretending they were fresh. The fight with the ichthyosaur had bruised his ribs and badly torn his forearm. The wraps around his arm had darkened, and Heath's breathing grew heavier. The knee he had kicked at the start made Heath drag one leg behind him. Heath strikes with short, efficient cuts, which he blocks with his axe head. Swings like that waste strength he no longer has, so Heath tests his left side first. Heath spots the delay every time he turns, striking that weak side twice. The second hit rips open his coat, forcing him back, but he hooks Heath's blade. He catches the obsidian blade with World Cleaver's edge, pulling Heath offline. He drives his shoulder into Heath's chest, sending him sliding 3 steps before digging his foot in. Stopping himself, Heath releases another short, devastating wave of force from his blade. He turns World Cleaver flat to catch the impact, but the shock reopens his arm wound. Look at that struggle. Every exchange numbs his fingers more as neither gains an inch. Each small step costs too much to waste, then Emery shouts as Bod falls. The surviving twins scream and the river fight goes quiet. He tries to look over. Heath strikes the flat of World Cleaver, instantly forcing his focus back to the duel. 4 disasters at once, he mutters, wishing he had just stayed with the dinosaur. Heath almost smiles, but that split-second distraction costs him. He hooks Heath's wrist. He drags the blade down. Heath twists free just before World Cleaver strikes. Still, the axe cuts through his guard, drawing first blood from his upper arm. As his blood drips onto the dirt, 2 Iron Peak fighters watch and lose focus. Heath notices them distracted and barks out, "Eyes on your enemies." They immediately obey. Even wounded, Heath keeps his line together as he drives forward. He slammed his shoulder into my chest, sending me flying across the dirt. I forced myself up quickly, determined not to let him see my weakness. My knees shook violently. Heath raised his blade, praising how well my tribe fought. He promised that if I fell, he would only take our borderlands. How generous, I answered, knowing he wanted our land and our captives too. His face hardened, and we clashed again as I swung World Cleaver. I deflected his obsidian blade, but my wounded arm nearly gave out entirely. Heath slashed across my wraps, splitting the fabric and sending pain to my shoulder. I had only one real strike left in me, and Heath looked just as exhausted. That made the sudden intrusion incredibly dangerous as an Iron Peak servant rushed forward. He ran from the torches, holding a bowl of red leaves and a burning branch. Dropping beside Heath, he urged him to breathe the smoke and finish me off. The sharp scent hit me immediately, bringing back terrible memories of that toxic smoke. It was the same madness that ruined Blackwater, so I struck first. I lunged forward before he could light them, but Heath blocked World Cleaver. He redirected my blade, then sliced his own servant's burning branch in half. The fire died in the dirt as Heath kicked the bowl of leaves away. The servant warned him of punishment, but Heath kept his blade focused on me. He declared he would finish this duel using his own strength, not cheap tricks. If the witch hated his honor, she could confront him about it herself. The servant scrambled away as Heath lowered his stance to face me once more. I gripped World Cleaver tightly with one hand, while my other went completely numb. The ridge around us was now a graveyard of broken traps and fallen warriors. Neither side had any strength left to step in and save their chief. He proposed one final strike. I nodded, then stepped directly into his charge. I unleashed World Cleaver's power, pushing my body to its absolute limits. The massive collision shattered the stone beneath us, carving a deep crater. Thick dust blinded us. When it settled, Heath lay defeated at the bottom. His obsidian blade was still in his hand, but he could not lift it. I stood over him, catching my breath as the last chief standing on this battlefield. The border was ours. The remaining Iron Peak warriors stared at their fallen leader. Across the ridge, Emery stood over a captured bod, holding her own wound. Nearby, Nola aimed her bow directly toward the enemy torch line. Above them, Bowen and Duncan knelt protectively beside their fallen sibling. Both brothers still gripped their weapons as Colby dragged our wounded to safety. Down by the river, Garrick and Axel lay collapsed side by side. Neither of them could stand. Marina still had not emerged from the water. The Iron Peak forces still had numbers, but they had no leader left. Realizing there were no easy victories left, none of them dared to advance. Our tribe had defended its land. Suddenly, the tight wraps on my arms snapped. Agony ripped through my chest and legs, making me drop World Cleaver. Nola rushed into the crater and caught me just before I collapsed. Before blacking out, I forced out my final orders to save Marina. I told her to bind all wounded, even our enemies, with no pursuit. As my vision faded, I gave full command of the tribe to Tamlin. Orders would flow through her until he woke. Nola's grip tightened at the final word. She shouted the command to Colby, who ran for the settlement signal. While Emery and the remaining fighters closed around the wounded, an Iron Peak warrior reached for Heath and Nola let him. The battle was finally over. Chasing broken enemies into the dark would only trigger traps on both sides, Nola repeated. Tamsin's name to every fighter still standing. They obeyed before he lost. Consciousness, the western ridge tilted beneath him. The last thing he saw was Heath still breathing in the crater, while their fighters lowered their weapons. Around him, then he blacked out. Several days after the western battle, he woke. Inside the largest house with Tamsin sitting beside his bed, the tribe had held the border. Heath was alive, and Marina had been pulled from the river. Every member of his border team survived the fight, though none came home clean. He had missed the entire aftermath. Tamsin had taken command outside the house. Sunshore slingers watched the western path beside Blackwater spear fighters. Tucker's builders repaired the damaged traps, while one guard called the noon watch in Tamsin's name. She had moved their injured home and separated Iron Peak's wounded from theirs. Then she doubled the western watch and stopped Garrick from crawling back toward Axel for one last argument. His queen had carried the tribe while its king was unconscious again. When he asked whether Iron Peak had attacked during his coma, Tamsin pressed him back onto the bedding. No, she replied, their wounded left after Heath fell. Ours stayed because I ordered them to. Outside, both factions changed watch when her guard called. Nobody waited for him to confirm it. This was becoming a terrible habit. Tamsin had loosened the upper strap of her hide wrap while changing his bandages. Her hair hung over one shoulder, and she looked far too pleased with his sudden interest in the ceiling, so he closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. Her finger touched the pulse in his neck. Your heartbeat changed, Tamsin murmured, sleep more. Convincingly, he kept his eyes shut. Battle trauma, he answered, minor. Tactical error. Tamsin leaned close enough that her hair brushed his chest. The Great King defeated Heath, then spent 3 days helpless in my bed. Should I test how much strength has returned? He opened one eye. You are enjoying this Power imbalance very much. She kissed him slowly, then pulled back before he could. Forget every injury the battle had given him, the rival queen who once tested him. With a whip was now his partner and co-ruler. She was also openly claiming. His recovery bed, Emery still wanted his children. Nola still flirted whenever. Tamsin looked away. Tamsin had no intention of letting either woman win. Quietly, the baby problem was no longer theoretical. Talk about a daily survival battle. But then the frontier system suddenly popped up right inside his vision. Private partner challenge. Complete 7 rounds before sunrise. Failure penalty, strength and stamina reduced to minimum for 7 days. He stared. At the message, 7 rounds before sunrise, his ribs hurt when he breathed too deeply, and Tamsin was looking at him like that number sounded conservative. The system had watched him nearly die in a territorial war and decided his recovery needed a side quest. He did what any responsible king would do and ignored. No response received, challenge accepted, silence counted as acceptance. Ryland stares at the frontier system. That's when Tamsin notices. She asks what his private miracle told him. Nothing helpful, apparently. Tracing his bandage, she tells him to focus on her. Ryland looks away. He prays for an emergency. Suddenly, Bramble crashes through. Wood splinters everywhere. The giant bear forces her massive head inside. She snatches his blanket and coat, dragging him right off the bedding. Tamsin grabs his ankle. Ryland holds the bed frame until it cracks. Bramble pulls harder, dragging him and the sleeping mat halfway through the wall. Tamsin snaps at Ryland to stop his bear. He yells. She never listens. The beast ignores his command. For one ridiculous second, the queen and the bear pull. Seriously, how did his life even get this crazy? Bramble wins. She easily hauls him through the broken wall, tosses him onto her back and runs toward the northern forest. Tamsin stands in the ruined house, holding his blanket in one hand and her whip in the other. She screams at them to bring him back, but Bramble just runs faster. The bear carries him all morning before heading into a rocky cave. 2 tiny shapes rush out from the darkness. Bramble kneels, making a deep sound Ryland has never heard. Instantly, both cubs call back. This giant beast, who terrified the gate guards, rolls onto her side so they can climb over her. Now her wild house-wrecking trip makes sense. Bramble did not come to steal him away. She wanted to show Ryland the family she needed him to protect. Out there, one brown cub climbs Bramble's leg, while the other red one attacks Ryland's boot with the fierce confidence of a tiny, weightless creature. This dramatic kidnapping has turned into a heartwarming family introduction. The brown cub climbs onto his lap before his bruised ribs can object. He names him Pip. The red sibling bites his coat and refuses to let go. He decides to name him Rusty. Both names are simple and very easy to scream during danger. Absolutely perfect. The system officially registers both cubs as recruitable beast allies. As Bramble leads them out, they follow the group back toward rookie territory. With the recruitment complete, Pip keeps falling behind to chew on tree roots. Rusty keeps gnawing on his coat. Bramble quickly handles both problems by nudging one cub and carrying the other. Ryland has gained a bear family, but he is easily the most useless parent here. Suddenly, a new rating pops up. Total value 98. Though the human population is the same, the system includes trained allies and beasts to measure his overall military strength. Next, it upgrades the mission scale to a full civilization mission. He must control 10 square kilometers and reach 300 tribe members within 6 months. It took him 18 days to turn 15 people into 50. Now the system wants a massive regional settlement, 6 times the population and an incredibly vast territory to hold multiple clans. Beside him, Bramble nudges Pip from some thorns while Rusty climbs the handle of World Cleaver. This bear family came with an expensive expansion bill. 300 people means Ryland needs land before iron. Peak attacks again. Once his ribs heal up, he plans to scout the settlement holding Marina's people. As they approach the rookie gates, the guards lower their weapons for Bramble. The tiny cubs safely stroll in right underneath her. While local children followed at a safe distance, Tamsin waited beside the broken house repair crew. She glared at Pip, then Rusty, then him, saying he left her bed and came back with 2 kids. He raised both hands. Bramble's children, an important distinction. Emery crouched beside Pip and let him sniff her hand while a nearby child hid a laugh. Tamsin grabbed the front of his coat, demanding he still owed her a wall. He told her to charge Bramble instead. Bramble sat down and ignored them both. The queen's argument had met its natural Predator. Over the next several days, his body finally recovered enough to ride. The tribe had already shown him who could handle each burden, so he made it official. Colby, his 19-year-old scout, took charge of the cubs and hyenas. Tucker held the western defenses. Nola managed the grain and food. Garrick prepared the deep water rescue while Marina recovered. Tamsin held final command once his ribs let him ride. He planned to inspect Iron Peak settlement and find Marina's captives. Before moving their people, Nola stepped forward when he announced the scouting trip. Nola offered to go instead since he just woke up. Tamsin folded her arms, targeting the woman who once started undressing in his recovery hut, suddenly wanting to protect his health. Nola smiled, noting she remembered that scene with impressive detail. Threats are memorable, Tamsin retorted. He stood between them with Bramble waiting outside. Having witnessed the original misunderstanding, this current version felt way less safe. Nola offered to take his route instead, but he refused. Heath and the border guards knew his face and World Cleaver. He needed to see those prisoners himself. Tamsin tightened his coat straps herself, ordering him to report what he finds. Not disappear for days, or, let's be real, bring home another wife. He glanced at Bramble, joking that bears were still allowed. Tamsin yanked the strap hard enough to answer. He rode Bramble toward Iron Peak completely alone. Halfway through the western forest, Bramble stopped and looked behind them. 2 rookie scouts were hiding poorly among the trees. He called out, telling Tamsin her secret followers needed quieter feet. Neither scout answered, simply keeping their distance. He took the stalking as harmless jealousy, glad Tamsin had sent backup anyway. By the next day, Bramble reached the lower cliffs beneath the Iron Peak settlement. Smoke rose from stone shelters above them. Narrow paths cut through the rock as prisoners moved between them under guard. Bramble's claws scraped the first incline while the 2 scouts stopped back where the trees ended. He went forward alone, knowing an armed group would look like a hostile invasion. Before he learned anything, guards appeared above the path holding obsidian spearheads. They saw the bear, saw World Cleaver, and still blocked the entrance. He demanded to see Heath Ashen, but one guard laughed, claiming Heath commanded nobody. They ordered him to leave before their chief skinned him, but he had crossed a lake with a Tyrannosaurus drowned inside an ichthyosaur's mouth and beaten Heath in a crater. Honestly, getting blocked at the door now felt disrespectfully ordinary. He moved one hand toward World Cleaver, forcing the guards to lower their obsidian points. Bramble loomed large behind him, and the nearest man instantly lost his laugh. He could have forced the first line, but the settlement above held unknown numbers, Marina's people. And whatever power the red leaf served, going in blind would be Garrick. Level decision-making. Suddenly, chains rattled beyond the guards, prisoners. Slaves hauled stone along the cliff face, iron collars linking them in one long line. Heath walked among them with his hair cropped short, his legendary weapon completely gone. Heavy chains bound his wrists. This was the man who once challenged him on equal terms. Now he carried heavy rocks under guards with half his strength. Axel Pace limped behind him. Bound by the same chains, the quick enforcer who almost ended Garrick kept his eyes low. He ignored the guards' insults and demanded to know what happened to their chief. The nearest guard looked pleased to explain how the witch grants her dark power. For the leaders of Iron Peaks, any chief who fails is stripped of that power and enslaved. Heath had lost to him. His very victory delivered the former chief to this brutal fate. Heath looked up and recognized him. Talk about an incredibly awkward reunion. He pulled once against his heavy bonds, but a guard struck the lynx with a spear. A hard blow forced him back. Beside Heath, Axel slowly lifted his battered, worn head. He looked thinner, but the burning hatred remained as strong as ever. Their cold, heavy chains already said more than enough to him. A guard yelled that the rookie king was here, and a massive figure stepped forward. Every Iron Peak guard instantly lowered their heads as the powerful man called down. The guards called him Zane Grimm, their brutal new leader, said to possess monstrous strength. They whispered Zane was even stronger than Heath. He shouted for the leader to descend. Zane merely stared down at Bramble and World Cleaver, choosing to look down from his cliff. Defeating the failed chief earned him absolutely nothing here, Zane mockingly called back. He raised his hand and pointed down.